Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Cape Coral City Council. Today is February 23rd, 2022. This meeting now comes to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gunter,
Here.
Councilmember Costin. Here. Hayden.
Here.
Long.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Shepherd.
Here.
Tate. Here. Welsh.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, which is business. 4A is citizens' input time. A maximum of 60 minutes is set for the input of citizens on matters concerning city government. 3 minutes per individual. Anyone wishing to speak during citizens' input has to use the podium to my left.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jim Jeske, Vice President of Southwest Cape Coral Action Committee, a neighborhood committee. And as part of our research in the Four Corners and the construction of the multifamily that's there, we ran into a couple things that we thought we'd bring it to the attention of the City Council. The traffic generation statement included with the Cape Southwest 97 multifamily development request stated that an impact study for traffic was not required because it will create fewer than 300 peak hour vehicle trips. If 300 vehicle trips per peak hour that Cape Coral uses as a minimum for a traffic study really is that a fair standard to the taxpayer? If that is the base, and using a 39.77 peak hour vehicle traffic trips generated by 97 apartments, it would then take 750 apartments or more to require a traffic study. If you use the ITE book, that equates to over 4,000 average trips per day. If we don't require the developer to do a traffic study at the time that they do the construction, then what happens is that any upgrades to the roads is back on the taxpayer and not on the developer. Within 1.2 miles of the Four Corners, we have 2 schools systems that are 1 through 12th grade, a condo complex of 60 units, Savona Apartments, which is fairly new, 319 units, a new storage complex, and now on the Four Corners, we got 97 apartments under construction, another 150 planned for 2 of the corners, and then the fourth corner has the potential of 36,000 square feet commercial. In our research, that reveals that Cape Coral has not done a traffic study in that area since 2011. That traffic study did include specific date and data for peak hour. We have not done a traffic study since that time. With all that construction going on and the explosion of single-family houses, some of those in our areas at 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, we're not sure that the city knows what's going on in our area with traffic without doing a current traffic study. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor, staff, and Mr. Hernandez. John Bashaw, Northwest Cape Coral. I'm here to talk about the 7 Islands. And what's before us, by the way, is an opportunity to set the gold standard on mixed-use development in Cape Coral, not only from a process standpoint, but from an end result standpoint. I've talked to you before about there being 3 stakeholders in any development or any zoning or any land use change, and those 3 stakeholders are the developer itself, the residents, and the city. They all have an equal voice. And in order to be successful in development, there needs to be some sort of compromise, some give and take. The overarching, call it impact that should be considered in all development, though, especially as we move forward in the next 50 years of Cape Coral, is the brand. And I'm convinced that we have followed the right process with the 7 islands to date. In 2016, we held a charrettes process. We received input from residents. Move forward a couple of years, we established the MX7 zoning district and got input from residents on permitted uses. So the box of resident input has been checked on the 7 islands. And paramount to the success of any development like this, though, is picking the right developer. And the developer has to have the financial wherewithal and demonstrated previous ability to develop something like this. But what's equally important is that the developer has to have an understanding of the nuances of that location. The 7 Islands is a very unique location that presents some problems in development because of the size of the footprint, but it's just so important that we get the right developer. It's also important that we have a developer that wants to continue to polish the brand of Cape Coral in the product that they deliver. I'd like to extend kudos to the selection committee for the process that they've gone through in selecting this developer, and it will be before you to make the ultimate decision. We really have checked all the right boxes with the 7 Islands development. There's a lot of work to be done yet, but I think we're on the right track. I also would like to say what's very important for the success of this project is the communication plan. That this particular project should have a communication strategy with a steady, slow drip of constant, consistent communication on what's happening with the project. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak during public input, please come forward. Seeing none, public input is now closed. Is there any council discussion on public input? Councilmember Shepherd.
Yeah, Mr. City Manager, could you have one of your staff reply to the first speaker with the traffic studies? What is our process and what are we doing?
So, council member, I don't think we are prepared to address the specifics of what was addressed. I just got a copy of what was presented this afternoon. I'm more than happy to have staff reach out to the speaker after this meeting, or by the end of the week.
Okay, and to me too, please.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion by council? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4B. 4B1, the first item of discussion is the 2022 legislative session update. Mr. City Manager.
So, Mr. Mayor, before we turn it over to Nick Matthews from the firm of Becker to update you on what's been happening up in Tallahassee, I'd like to add a 9th item to your agenda if I can. Just like for staff to give you a quick update on where we are with our conversion in our Development Services Department from the eTrackit system to the new EnerGov system. So with your approval, I'd like to add that as the last item on your agenda for today.
Anyone have a problem with that?
Okay, let's move forward and turn it over to Nick Matthews. Nick, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Again, Nick Matthews with the Becker firm, and the Becker firm's had the pleasure of representing Cape Coral for many years now in Tallahassee, and we take a lot of pride in being your eyes and ears up in Tallahassee. I want to start my kind of a quick recap by thanking a few members of the council who took some time to come up to Tallahassee and had some really, I think, effective quality meetings. Mayor Gunter, Councilmember Tate, and Councilmember Hayden, and Maureen Weiss on your staff joined us in Tallahassee. And as you can see, we had a really great couple days up there and had some really impactful meetings. In fact, I think Councilmember Tate and Councilmember Hayden will take credit for killing a piece of legislation in one meeting up there. They came out and spiked the football after one meeting on the trash legislation. So, so thank you again for coming up. I think those meetings are really important. It really matters. And Councilmember Nelson has been great in jumping on Zooms with members of the legislature also. I think it's important that our delegation members see the city as not just us sending paper up there and saying, give us money, and then we don't do our homework, we don't have skin in the game, and we don't travel up there as well. I think it's important that we get up there, get in front of them, and then let them know we're making the rounds to support our projects, because it's important. So every year, please reach out if you want to make trips to Tallahassee. It's a good experience. Moving on, just to kind of some high-level notes to kind of understand where we are in the legislative process. Today's the 43rd day of a 60-day legislative session. We are kind of entering the phase where if a bill hasn't started moving already, it's probably dead. No new bills can be introduced. Some of the rules of the House and Senate prevent new ideas and stuff coming up. That doesn't stop things like Senate Bill 2508, which we'll get into in a minute. But we are really going to dive heavily into the budget process at the moment. Both chambers have moved their independent budgets off the floors, and conference negotiations will begin in the next week or so. And that's really the process where they bridge the gaps between the House and Senate budgets and come to one budget that both chambers have to pass. Right now, they're about $3 billion apart. Kind of no matter where they land, this will be a record-breaking budget for Florida, which is pretty exciting. And just kind of so you can kind of see what things happen in Tallahassee. The two budget conversations will hinge on things like a $70 million difference in affordable housing. One of the budgets moves $250 million away from hospitals and Medicaid reimbursements. That's kind of an annual fight that happens. A $200 million difference in Everglades restoration between the budgets. And the Senate wants to set a $15 minimum wage for all employees and any direct service providers under the state, and then the House is only at $13. So just those are the kind of things that need to get figured out over the next couple of weeks where they'll land, and most of this stuff they'll land somewhere in the middle. If one of the budgets has it now, something will be there by the end of the process in all likelihood, that something for the city is 5 of our legislative appropriation requests. So this is probably the first time this late in session where I can tell you every single appropriation item we submitted is alive and well. They all have an opportunity to pass and get funded. At this point, you want to be in one of the two budgets to be in the conversation as conference begins and budget negotiations are carried out. And I'm happy to report that all of them are in play, and we'll be up there just making sure that none of this falls off the table, and to bring home as much as we can, which we've had a pretty good track record in the last couple of years of making sure the city gets something that it deserves and a dollar amount that the city deserves. Moving on briefly into some legislation, I know the top of mind has been Senate Bill 2508, which kind of was fabricated out of thin air a little bit in the legislative process and caused a lot of controversy and a lot of issues between environmental groups, ag. The day that bill was filed, I don't think I've ever seen the governor's office ever issue a statement on a bill that just appeared that strong, in strong opposition to it. So I would say the legislature's heard arguments from local governments, environmentalists alike. The bill has been amended to basically, the bill now won't revise Lake Okeechobee water release schedules, and the legislation is pretty clear in that it won't reduce funding for the Everglades Agricultural Area Reservoir, which I think those were two of the main contentions for the environmentalist groups. So I think the bill is probably still not a great thing from maybe local governments' standpoint, especially in Southwest Florida and environmentalists, but it is a lot better than where it started. And that fight is not over yet. That is the controversial part of that bill is it kind of came out of the budget process, which is atypical for something that has this much policy in it. And I think that is what really upset a lot of people. It didn't go through the traditional committee process where you have a lot of stakeholder input and public debate and amendments and that kind of stuff. It kind of popped up as a conforming bill that travels alongside with the budget, but also doesn't have the same rules as a standard piece of legislation with respect to public input and all that. We will keep watching that. That is a high-level issue. That is a issue that the Senate felt very strongly about. The governor's office felt very differently. The member carrying the legislation now is a future Senate president. So there's a lot of pieces on that chessboard that are having conversations, presumably behind closed doors, to get it all hammered out. And I think they've heard the message. My recommendation would be to We will make sure our delegation understands that it's an issue that is on our minds and we're very concerned about it. But I wouldn't dive headfirst in with some sort of city resolution or a letter or anything like that. That would just be my recommendation now. We only have a handful of days left in session. We're really well situated with respect to the budget. If I thought us chiming in on that issue turned it on its head and killed that bill, that would be one thing, but I don't know if it's the juices worth the squeeze on engaging directly on that piece of legislation. Moving on real quickly, there's a couple other ones. Some of these really kind of funky preemptions and new causes of actions against local government. Sadly, versions of those bills are going to pass this session. These aren't bills where one industry came up with an idea and we can kind of counterbalance that. These are ideas that Senate and House leadership have come up with and really are going to ram those home. I am happy to report the solid waste legislation, which was obviously something very concerning to the city here, which the bill, for those who don't know, would literally make it so that we could not pursue administrative charges or liquidated damages against your solid waste provider during a declared state of emergency. And my argument all along has been, if you can't rely on one of your vendors during an emergency, that's when you need them most. What kind of partner is that? But the legislation would have literally mandated and dictated what you can put in your contracts and how you can go after them. We believe that bill to be dead. Did not move in the Senate, moved in the House. And Councilmember Hayden, you had a really quality meeting with the sponsor of that bill in the House. And I think he understood our position and realized what he was up against with that. Another one I know that is on your minds is the sovereign immunity legislation. As of today, the caps were amended again, and now we've got this tiered structure. Under 50,000 residents, you are exposed to a $200,000 and $300,000 setup. The 5,000 residents to 250,000, which I believe the city is right around 200,000 at the moment. How many? I think something around there. We would have the 300, 400 exposure, 300,000, 400,000 exposure in the current legislation, which is up from current law, but not as bad as the million. I know there was $1 million at one point in a previous version. So again, not great, but has moved in a better direction. I know the folks that care about some of the pet legislation, the bad bills are dying and the good ones are moving, is what I'm happy to report. We don't have to spend a ton of time on that. And I would actually, Mr. City Manager and Mayor, I would direct your staff to take a look at the House tax package that has come out, and I'll make sure we'll follow up with a copy of that. There is some bizarre kind of language in there that makes it really hard for a city to do budgeting, and one of the provisions is providing tax relief for homesteaded property rendered uninhabitable for 30 days or more due to a catastrophic event. So I don't know how you could ever know. First off, we don't know when catastrophic events are coming. We don't know how severe they'll be or how long they will last. And then what properties are uninhabitable. Now we have to figure out whose property is so damaged that it's uninhabitable, but their neighbors may not be. And now we have to kind of know the budget implications of that. I think if bonding and those types of things rely on ad valorem taxation, these are kind of one of those weird things that now throws a little bit of a curveball into that. So I would certainly recommend staff take a look at that and try to wrap their head around what that means for the city in terms of budgeting. But there are a couple property tax issues in the tax package, which is a kind of grab bag of tax relief. Not really targeted at any one thing, but it's very much a grab bag of policy, tax incentives for different industries and property owners. So that was kind of a snapshot, maybe not a snapshot, maybe I've gone a little too long, but that is kind of where we stand in the legislative session. I feel comfortable about our appropriation items. We have strong delegation members, I think. Council, I would ask you every time you come across Senator Rodriguez or Representative Gianlombardo, please thank them for their hard work for the city. We don't always align on their votes on legislation or what bills they're sponsoring, but that's the process, that's life. But what we can always count on them for, and it's pretty incredible, is that they will go to bat for the city when it comes to appropriation items, and that's a huge thing. Not every local government has advocates in Tallahassee quite like that, so I would encourage you to please make sure you thank them if you do see them and let them know it means a lot to the city.
Thank you. I'll open up for council discussion. Councilmember Tate.
I just wanted to thank you, Nick. It was a pleasure going around with you, and I think we made some real progress. For the city manager and our budgeting, I'm really concerned about the homestead exemption that they are putting on for this. To me, it's like building a second class of citizens, you know, and that's what's going to happen. And then you've got the third class, which is what I'm in for, the widow's exemption. And so I think that that's going to be a little hard for cities to budget. And once we do determine whether that's going to pass or not, I certainly hope not. But I see in your notes it says some version of it. So I'm hoping that no version of it passes. But Councilmember Hayden and I can't go back and kill that one, just like we did the garbage, so, you know. But all kidding aside, it was really great. I thank you very much, and I think we did very well. We handed out our gifts, and we were well received, so thank you so much.
I think one of the, again, thank you for coming to Tallahassee. I think it was a trip that was worthwhile. I think one of the messages we try to tell legislators up there when they come about tax, it's like, you have a $100 billion budget. Look, spend your own money, cut your own budget. Don't mandate things on us, and now and create several different causes of actions against city, which will drive up costs for us, and then cut our budgets over here, or make sure there's certain tax benefits to certain types of employees that we have to pay. So, yeah, that is an ongoing thing. It's an annual thing, and we fight it, but sometimes it's a leadership-driven thing, and it's...
Councilmember Hayden.
I don't know, Councilmember Tay, don't sell us short. We're on a roll. We can do this.
It's not too late.
Nick, again, thank you for all the work that you do up there for us. The discrepancy in the amount for the river crossing project between the Senate and the House, Senate's has doubled from the House. Do we have any idea where that's going to land? Can we anticipate we'll get the 1.75 million, or is it going to fall somewhere in between?
I'm aiming for that full amount. I think if there's a year that we can get it, I think it's possible. That's what we're going to ask for. The budget numbers have become kind of a game at certain times. One of the parts of the weird process is if right now we had identical numbers, let's say we had $1 million in the House, $1 million in the Senate, once they go to conference, that would close out and that would be done. We'd get our $1 million and we'd be done. Based on the amount of money the legislature has and who our members are up there, we could end up higher than these numbers potentially by them not matching right now. It's bizarre, but that's how it works. But I think the 1.75 is certainly in play, and we are going to do what we can to advocate for it.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Nick, for setting up my Zoom calls with Senator Ray Rod and, of course, Mike and Adam Botana. Yesterday in my call with Representative Gia Lombardo, Ellen was on the call, and they mentioned that the money that we requested for our police training facility got nixed as of yesterday. Did you know that? You didn't hear that?
I did not know. That may be something that's not in a budget yet, or maybe
Okay,
Mike or Representative Lombardo may have heard something that's coming that we haven't heard yet. No, I did not.
Okay, if you could just follow up.
Yeah, I'll
and
double check that,
confirm,
certainly.
Maybe my ears weren't working well or something, but that's what I understood.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to say thank you again for setting that up and for being such a resource to our city. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank you for all your hard work up there, and, I always look forward to going up there, when we do, and I agree with you. Anytime that either myself or any council can go there and advocate for our community, one-on-one, face-to-face, I think it's much better than a letter that we could ever send, so I look forward to, years to come to be able to help in that endeavor as well.
Thank you.
So
Just let us know. We'll make sure it's a worthwhile trip, and we'll keep you busy.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda, item 4B2, broadband service update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to have your Director of Information Technology Services, Ms. Michelle Hoffman, approach the podium. And I believe she has a guest that she'll introduce as well in a second. This is just basically a follow-up to a conversation we had probably 6 months ago now with regard to the city's efforts to continue to roll out expanded broadband services throughout the city. And as you know, the city council entered into a partnership with Comcast to allow them, or to work with them to speed up their rollout of their infrastructure throughout the city, but particularly in underserved sections of the northeast, northwest, and north central parts of the city. But in addition, we've also submitted a grant application to the federal government for broadband rollout. So I'm going to have Ms. Hoffman give us an update on where we are with both of those initiatives. Thank you.
Hi, Michelle Hoffman, IT Director. I have with me Jen Boyette from Comcast, who will speak with you next. In regards to the Department of Commerce NTIA broadband grant, the last information we heard from them was that they were going to give out the grants sometime early 2022. And we have had no more guidance, and they have not given out any grants so far. So that's where we stand with that one. Jen?
Hello, I am Jennifer Boyette. I'm External Affairs at Comcast. Thanks so much for having me today to give you an update on our progress on the build-out. You guys partnered with us back in November. Thank you so much. Progress is going very well. I think anybody who's seen the map know we broke it down into 3 phases. The first phase is in the northeast. I wrote my street names down. So we're talking Santa Barbara Boulevard north, from Northeast 19th Terrace north to Durden Parkway, and beyond that as well. But that's the area we started on first. Phase 2 is all the way over to the northwest. So that is Burnt Store Road west to the coast and up to the Charlotte Harbor Buffer Preserve. And again, from about the northeast 19th Terrace. I think the road name changes at that point, but that's about the line across the bottom. And then we'll hit the phase 3, which is the central area in the middle. So that's everything in between Burnt Store Road and Santa Barbara Boulevard, and then Northeast Terrace, north up to Jacaranda Parkway north, I believe it is. But at any rate, the map is available to council members who want to see where we're going. So phase 1 is going very well. We're almost done. We've already started moving on phase 2. People do not have to wait for us to finish all 3 phases to get service. As soon as we are ready to roll out phase 1, those customers will be serviceable before we finish the rest of it. So we will keep you posted on that when we're ready to get communication out to those residents to let them know that the service is available to them at that point. And we feel confident about our progression. Everything is going very smoothly. We're aggressive about finishing this up and building it out. So without giving you any specific dates, we are on target to get this done soon, in an adequate amount of time. I know Michelle had brought up to me in the past that there are some residents concerned about pockets of neighborhoods or areas that are below that line or other places of Cape Coral where they currently don't have service and do not think they are included in this build out simply because it isn't on the map. That is not true. Everybody will be built out. Even if they aren't in that map, we're covering all of Cape Coral. Again, I just can't give you a specific timeline on when those patches of areas will be completed, but we are aware of all of them. We cross-check our maps with your maps, so we know where they are. But again, if you get any emails from residents concerned about that, forward them to me, and we will double-check the addresses to make sure it's on our agenda to get that built out. But all of Cape Coral should be covered soon.
Thank you. You have any questions? Council have any questions? Councilmember Cosden.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. How will you be notifying residents that it's available?
We will coordinate with you, but yes, we have a public relations team, and we will coordinate with your PR team. We could do commercials, we can do specific targeted outreach to those specific residents. We'll coordinate with you on the back end to come up with a communications plan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Long.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question to follow up. You had indicated that there's pockets outside of the maps, and I think, forwarded you some of those emails myself. And the response is always what you indicated just now, which is that they will be serviced. My question, I guess, would be, when you say those pockets and we don't have a timeline, are we talking about those being within the general timeline that was given originally into this project, or is that a separate timeline?
No, it should be in the timeline of this current
Okay,
project.
I just wanted to make sure that
everything will be complete.
bundled in. Okay, thank you. And thanks again for taking the time this evening.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming for the update, and I'm sure our residents are eagerly awaiting the upgrades.
Excellent. We're excited too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, 4B3, Seven Islands update, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. This next discussion deals with a project that has been underway for quite some time, and it transcends multiple city councils and now 2 administrations in the city manager's office. But it's certainly a project that was deemed to be very important by a predecessor city council, and staff has continued to work on implementing the vision that a prior city council worked on in collaboration with residents of the Northwest, and that is to provide a high-quality, mixed-use destination in the Northwest. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, when the city concluded its arrangement with the real estate services firm CBRE, we decided to put out a request for proposals to determine if there was any interest in the marketplace for a developer to come in and build the type of development that council approved and mandated as part of the MX7 zoning district. And we were pleasantly surprised to have received 2 responses to our request for proposals. And so this afternoon, you are going to meet the #1 ranked firm, Forest Development. They will bring their team up to the podium and introduce themselves to you. But before we do that, I'm going to ask the assistant to the city manager, Ms. Maureen Bice, to come to the podium to kind of give you an overview of exactly where we've been as a city with regard to this project, because it's been several years and people tend to forget the multiple meetings that city council had with the public to solicit their input and ultimately to gain their support for this high quality project and hopefully allow us to move forward. So Ms. Bice, you're at the podium? Okay. And so she can take it over from here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. Maureen Bice, Assistant to the City Manager. Presentation up. Our first slide before you is an overview of today's discussion. Following today's discussion, as the City Manager mentioned, we will conclude with a presentation from Forest Development. And following their presentation, both staff and Forest Development will be available to answer any of your questions. Each of you know where the Seven Islands property is located. However, for the benefit of anyone who may be watching that doesn't know, the city-owned property is located north of Pine Island Road and south of Tropicana Parkway in northwest Cape Coral. The 7 rectangular-shaped pieces of land along Old Burnstone Road North on the North Spreader Canal are referred to as the Seven Islands. The city obtained this property in 2012 as part of a large foreclosure sale of 491 parcels, all of which were located north of Pine Island Road. In your original packet, there was a typo on this slide, but it has been corrected, and the information on the screen before you is accurate. In this foreclosure sale, the city paid just over $13.7 million for 652 acres. The Seven Islands property is about 47 acres. It's important to note that a portion of the Stormwater Fund as well as the Water and Sewer Fund paid for the Seven Islands property, which means about $3.9 million must be paid back to these funds when the property is sold. Let's talk a moment about what led us to the future development of this property in northwest Cape Coral. In 2015, the city hired a consultant to develop a master plan for the Seven Islands. The plan involved public workshops and public meetings with extensive input from the community. Following this process, a final report was presented to the City Council. The council established minimum and maximum design standards and eventually adopted what is known as the D1 concept or master plan. The concept plan was adopted after several options were considered and some adjustments were made. The D1 concept plan forms the basis for future development at this property. This is a picture of the D1 concept, and I know it's a little difficult to see, which is why on the next slide we'll break down the design standards for you. The D1 concept includes residential and commercial components. The maximum height for multifamily structures is 8 stories, and commercial structures are limited to 6 stories. And you'll see here on the table some of the other design standards related to the D1 concept. The City Council adopted future land use changes and zoning changes that apply to the Seven Islands property. In 2018, the council established the Seven Islands Subdistrict Land Use Classification, and the following year, in 2019, the Seven Islands Zoning District was established. The future land use classification and zoning district were established to align with the D1 concept that was adopted for the property. Information on this page provides a timeline of the changes that were made. The Seven Islands Land Use Classification and Zoning District contain the parameters for development. Some of these parameters I'll highlight for you today, but they're also on the slide. The number of dwelling units is limited to 995. A hotel on the property would be limited to no more than 240 rooms. There's a non-residential component of the project that is also limited to 111,000 square feet. As I mentioned before, the maximum height of any multifamily structure is 115 feet or 8 stories. The mixed-use Seven Islands zoning district involves an objective, and that objective is clearly stated in the city's code. The objective of this zoning district is that the purpose is to foster a sense of place and create a destination environment. It was established to create a comprehensively planned mixed-use development for the Seven Islands area. The permitted uses for this area include, but are not limited to, a mix of residential dwelling units and non-residential square footage that must be in accordance with the D1 concept. All uses must also conform to the guidelines of the D1 concept and Seven Islands Master Plan. Any building primarily used for retail or office use must be oriented toward the street and must be kept to a minimum between the building and the front lot line. And a final point that I would like to mention is that the zoning district requires a minimum green space requirement of 30% of the total site area. This information details the competitive solicitation process that took place to attract a developer for the property. The most recent solicitation process began in July of 2021, as the city manager mentioned. 2 proposals were received in response to the request for proposals that was issued by the city, and those are in front of you. An evaluation team was formed in accordance with the city's ordinance, and the team ranked the responses to the RFP based on adherence to the D1 concept, experience with waterfront properties, local contractor participation in the project, and other considerations listed before you. Following city manager approval of the evaluation team's recommendation for the number 1 ranked firm, negotiations with Forest Development began. Before we discuss the key terms of the contract for sale, I think it's important to share that the property was appraised in May of last year for $20 million. The proposed purchase price is also $20 million, and as mentioned previously, about $3.9 million will be reimbursed to the Stormwater Fund as well as the Water and Sewer Fund. There are about $2.5 million identified for proposed economic incentives that are tied to benchmarks. This would ultimately result in a net of about $13.6 million. The key terms of the vacant land contract include a $1 million deposit that would be applied toward the purchase price at closing. There will be multiple regulatory permits needed for this project that will be discussed a little bit later on by Forest Development. And the city will be the permit applicant for these regulatory permits, while the developer will pay for all costs related to obtaining the permits. Other terms of the contract include closing that will take place within 30 days of the developer securing all governmental permits required to build commercial space. That means that the city will retain ownership of the property until these permits are secured. The contract requires development to be consistent with the D1 concept plan, the MX7, the mixed-use Seven Islands District zoning, and the proposed development schedule. The city and developer will enter into a development agreement that will require council approval, and we can adjust the following incentives based on your input today. The proposed economic incentives that were mentioned are based on certain milestones, and staff has proposed the following: $500,000 for approval of the first building permit for commercial space, $1 million for issuance of the first CO or TCO for commercial space, $500,000 for submitting the first building permit for residential space, and $500,000 for issuance of the first CO or TCO for residential space. If council decides to move forward, the property will need to be declared a surplus property, and the contract will require approval. This can occur at the same meeting. Before the first permit is issued, a development agreement will come to council for your consideration and approval, and we estimate that the developer agreement can be drafted in June. However, given the fact that council hiatus will be taking place, the agreement would have to be approved in July when you return. This timeline, of course, assumes that there's sufficient time for the city attorney's office to prepare the necessary legal documentation. Now I'm going to have Larry and his team come up, and we will have a presentation from Forest Development about the details on their project.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for allowing us to join you this afternoon. My name is Larry Zabik. I'm the project manager for Forest Development, and with me here today is the managing principal of Forest Development, Peter Baytarian, and his local partner, Scott Dunlap, and I'll let them say a couple of words before we share our presentation with you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commission members. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here. I'm Peter Baytarian, managing member of Forest Development.
Council, how are you doing today? Scott Dunlap, been here about 24 years in the city of Cape Coral. Been working with Avalon Engineering and land development for most of that 20-some years. So I go back to the days of Larry Hildreth, you know them or who he was. But I've watched the Seven Islands over the years, kind of come into its own here. It's sat there idle for a long time. I do want to tell you guys how much we appreciate the fact you took these steps to initiate both the zoning and land use changes that make this development possible, as well as bringing utilities to that site. It was a pretty site, and we see a lot of opportunity there, but prior to those two things occurring, there really wasn't much opportunity for development. I think it's today ripe for investment and development opportunity, and we're glad to be partnering with the city and see if we can't get something down here that really brings pride to the whole city. So, all right.
Mr. Mayor, I can't share how excited we are about this project and that we were selected as the #1 recommendation from staff. I would like to first thank the city manager and staff. They have been a pleasure to work with. Not necessarily easy. We have been, though, working through this. This is the first time we have actually met in person. We've been doing Zoom and conference calls since last summer, and that has had its own challenges, but we have had really superior support from Mark Connolly and Wanda Roop in the procurement department, all the way through with everyone else in staff, and we can't speak highly enough about them. It has been a very good process, and we're very excited to become partners with Cape Coral. What I did was I put together an update on the presentation that we provided to staff in our final selection, and wanted to give you some of those updates and then open it up to the questions that you may have. We put together an A-team, and the A-team is headed by local talent. Avalon Engineering will be our principal land planner. Hans Wilson will be dealing with the marina permitting and the key issues. CAST will be our major construction contractor. Local people that know the area and are prepared to work on the project and are excited about it. We received the commitment from the principals of the companies to work on this project and make it a success. We don't view this as a one-year project, and you'll see in my schedule, we have a 10-year project. And we are in this for a long-term partnership with the city, and our negotiations with the staff reflect that. I'm going to share with you some pictures from what we're doing on the East Coast in Lake Park right now. 4 years ago, Peter started putting together some property in Lake Park for a condominium called Nautilus 220. Originally, it started off as a typical Florida condominium, about 150 units. In partnering with the City of Lake Park, it has grown. It's a 330-unit condominium, and it's under construction right now. In addition to that, we've partnered with the city to develop some property that the city owns adjacent to Nautilus and the marina, and turning it into a destination. And that's what our vision is for this project for Cape Coral. We view the marina and the commercial space as ripe for an opportunity that we can develop as a destination, and that's our game plan, exactly what we're doing on the East Coast, and we're very excited about that. Staff was very helpful, and Scott and the local consultants here helping us understand Cape Coral's vision and what the history is, and we share that vision. We want to be a long-term community partner here, and we're looking forward to developing in accordance with the D1 plan and working with city staff and with the commission as we reach the final details of all of the ins and outs of the development. The City of Lake Park was kind enough to give us a letter of recommendation, and we wanted to share that, and certainly encourage you, if you have any questions, to call the city manager or the city mayor and council. We have, as I said, been partnering very closely with them over the last 4 years, and that's the model that we're using for Cape Coral. So to turn Nautilus into a destination, which is a mixed-use development, we have 2 restaurant spaces and 20,000 square feet of mixed-use commercial, retail, and other space. We looked for key brands that we could bring in that turn in the marina into a destination that people not only want to live there, but want to come and visit, want to work in the area, and want to come and visit. And Peter was successful in bringing in Chef David Burke. Some of you may be aware of. He's on TV on Top Chef and Iron Chef. He's also bought a condominium there. So we're very excited about that, and he's going to be the anchor of the restaurants. He's Mr. Bacon. And then recently we also have a letter of intent from Serendipity, another premier restaurant that we're looking to add to the restaurants that we're going to put in at this location and turn the Nautilus condominium into the Lake Park Marina destination. So the development plan that we worked on with staff and that we want to move forward is a 10-year plan. We look to implement your D1 plan. We view it as a legacy development plan. It's a large development that we'll do over the next 10 years and will become an icon for Cape Coral. We think that Cape Coral is ready for the development, the site is right, and we can do this around a marina water lifestyle. We think the work that we're proposing will be complementary to the neighborhood. Scott has been working closely with the neighbors. They understand what's going on. They've been involved. It was kind. We had some kind words from one of the neighbors today, and we expect to continue those communications and work closely with the neighborhood. The project will provide the city significant tax and economic benefits, and I'll have a slide to share with that in just a moment. The biggest challenge we all face is going to be the marina permitting, and we recognize that. We think it's going to take 2 years. It may take a little bit longer, but in the meantime, we want to move forward with some of the other development as well and start the planning process with you and with your staff. The Corps of Engineers, the Department of Environmental Protection, and this alphabet soup of all these other agencies that we have to go through, we're prepared to do. We have the best consultants able to make that work, and we are confident that we can get the permits that we need to. The city is going to be our permittee because the city and government agencies get treated a little bit better than the private sector in this process, and we look forward to partnering with you as we move forward with this. Hans Wilson has already started. One of the studies that they did is a navigation and waterway improvement study. They're also working on the details of what we need to do for all of the permits. As we get your approval and move forward, we'll start that process. What we want to talk about with you and staff are the types of vessels we want to use, exactly what we're looking to attract, the stakeholders in the area, and how we maintain good relationships with them, as well as preserve the existing environmental areas over there and maintain water quality and resource protection. In terms of financing, and this was an important part of consideration from the city, Forest Development is a 4-year-old company. They own just under $100 million of property, debt-free right now, and the partners, as needed, put in the equity that's required for us to move forward. We are, next month, closing a $250 million loan on the Nautilus project. We're in our final due diligence with that. We don't see any problems with financing this project. We're working with Concord Summit as our financial consultant, and they are very, very good at putting together the financing that we need. For the Nautilus development, we spent more time reviewing 13 different term sheets before we settled on who the best financing was and the best terms. We don't anticipate any issues at all with financing, and we look forward to moving forward with the financing and development as we've outlined. As Maureen said, we're looking at a $20 million purchase price with a $1 million deposit and $19 million on closing. The D1 plan is the game plan that we're going to follow. We do want to work with staff to work out the specific details, but our intent is to follow through with what your vision is and implement that. This is the 10-year program, and we will start to detail this out as we work through the pieces. Over the last month, we've started looking at the opportunities that we may be able to move forward with some of the residential and commercial pieces prior to the marina. We think that those are economically viable, and we'll work with you to see if we can get started a little bit sooner rather than waiting for the marina permits to be in place before we really start some of the other development. From an economic perspective, this project is going to generate over the life over 10,000 jobs in terms of the construction and the development. The project's investment is estimated to be just under 2/3 of $1 billion, and the economic impact of that is probably approaching close to $2 billion over that period of time. We're excited about this. It means a lot of jobs for the area, a lot of jobs for Cape Coral, but it also means significant tax revenue for Cape Coral with minimal increases to your requirement for added services. And with that, I will open it up to questions from the mayor and council. We appreciate your time this afternoon very much.
Thank you. Any questions from council? I do have a few questions myself. Looking at your Gantt chart, when you look at some of the things that the D1 concept plan has, you have a commercial village of about 45,000 square feet, hotel of not less than 240 rooms, and a community center of 40,000 square feet that's listed in the D1 concept plan. When you look on your Gantt chart, I don't see anything mentioned of the community center.
Can you put that chart up? Can you also
Let's see if I can back that up. Maureen here? Some technical help here.
That's okay.
There we go. Thank you very much. I put this chart together and I looked at the major elements, and that was not something, that I viewed as a major element, but we have looked at that, and that's something that I think we'll need to work closely with the city staff and with you to determine what it is, what the right size is, what the uses are going to be, who's going to operate it, and figure that in. But in our overall plan, we knew that we had a community center component that we were going to include.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because it was mentioned in the D1 plan, but I didn't see it here in your Gantt chart. In addition to that, when you look at the economic incentives that are listed in your presentation and also in staff's, I had a little bit of a concern with that, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the economic incentives, the first item being approval of a first building permit, commercial, and it's a $500,000 incentive. Also, we have a first CO of commercial space, which is a $1 million incentive. Number 3 on there is a first permit approval for a residential element of this project of a $500,000 economic incentive, and we have a CO for a residential component as well for $500,000. For me, this is a little too broad. I think we have to be more defined exactly what needs to be accomplished before we have this type of an incentive program, and I'll give you an example. Take the commercial aspect of it. This project's about 45,000 square feet. And I'm not saying this is the case, but it is something that, I thought of when I was reviewing all the data here. Say we do a commercial project of 2,000 square feet, somewhere within the D1 concept plan, then the incentives that is listed here, because it just says building permit, and it just says a CO of a commercial space. There's no defined element that I think we have to make sure that it's crystal clear, not only on our part, but for their part as well. So I think we could be a little more descriptive when we are developing what the incentive actually is. So not only do you know what the expectation is, we have the same as well. The other aspect of the the residential component for the incentive package. As we all know, we just received our first quarter reports for our economic development. We had about $240 million of residential economic development the first quarter. Out of that $240 million, $220 million was the residential component. So for me personally, incentives for residential aspect of not only this project, but throughout the city in general, we don't have a residential economic development problem. What we do have is a mixed use, commercial, hotels, the marina, those type of elements is where we are lacking in our community. So for me, I think when we look at economic developments, not only to be more descriptive and exactly what the expectation is, but also to take a look at some of the other components of this particular project, like the community center, like the hotel that we are looking for, and to craft the incentives in a fashion that we are promoting that development first over the residential component. Now, I know I've been in the building industry for over 35 years myself, so I know the residential component is very profitable for you. But I think as a city, what we are looking for in this project is the components that will bring something to the table that we don't have in that area, like commercial, like hotels, things of that nature. So I would rather see the incentives crafted in such a way that we are attracting those components more so than the residential aspect of the project. And that's just my opinion. When you kind of look at it, at a higher spectrum across the board there. So that's
Mayor,
for
we
me.
can agree to that. That's easy. And if you give the manager direction on how you want that mix, I'm sure we can work that out.
Okay. And so that's my point of view on this. Other than that, I'm glad to see this project moving forward. As the city manager stated, we've been talking about this particular project for many, many years. I appreciate you stepping up to the plate. I think it's going to be a fabulous project when it's completed. So for the next 10 years, I look forward to the project to move along accordingly like you've outlined in your Gantt chart here. And I think at the end we'll have a phenomenal destination location for not only our residents, but our visitors of our city. So thank you. Councilmember Long.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would echo those sentiments. I'm excited for what this means for the city of Cape Coral moving forward, and I want to thank you guys for sticking with us here. I know you said that it's not been an easy process, and so I don't imagine it's going to get much easier before it starts. We get into the bulk of it. So thank you again. I just wanted to follow up on the mayor's comment regarding the incentives and how we might have got to that, because I was looking at it from a relatively different angle. I thought maybe that was part of that was based on the timeline rather than the actual incentive of bringing in the residential space as well. Mr. City Manager, can you maybe explain the incentive behind why we would have brought it this way, as opposed to maybe, was I off base and maybe thinking that it's more based on not the need for the city to bring in that residential base, but more along the lines of maybe corresponding as an incentive for a timeline based on how they've laid it out here?
So council member, I think that the feedback that we've gotten so far has been very helpful. Certainly, it's an approach that is different than what we incorporated in our negotiations, but it's certainly something that we could look at. And I think generally what we were doing here, and consistent with our Cape Competes program, is we are looking to incentivize developments that create a destination or a draw for people to come to the Cape and obviously spend money and generate economic activity. So within Cape Competes, you do allow for some incentives to be provided for developments that have a residential component. I think in this particular case, certainly we can go back and minimize the incentive that is going towards residential and build up the amount of incentives that are going towards the commercial, marina, and other public uses. And so that's just a different approach, and not to say that one is right or wrong. However, but listening to the feedback, I think that probably fits in to our overall game plan better with regard to this project. And so we're happy to sit down with the development team and negotiate a different incentive package that has different milestones based on the development of the commercial elements that we desire.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you all for being here. Glad to finally see this gaining some traction.
Councilmember Hayden.
Yeah, it's going to be a great project, but Mayor, just to follow up on what you said, to maybe give this group even some more direction. I agree with you, it's probably too broad the way it's set up. Are you thinking more specifically like 50-60% of the commercial developed within 2 years, a community center done employing 50 people within 3 years? Are you tying development on the commercial side to specific areas so that there is some actual incentive there in terms of where the growth goes, what's developed, what isn't developed? Similar to what might happen within Lee County and their economic development program, where they tie it to specific development needs and what happens. Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, that's kind of what my thought is, and also to be very specific, if it's going to be, take the commercial aspect, if it's 45,000 square feet, they have to CO a certain percentage of that before they get it. So
Okay.
it's just where it's very specific benchmarks along the way, so both parties, I think, know exactly what the expectation is.
Understood. That's something that's attainable or worth further discussion on?
Oh, I think so, and part of our thinking has changed as well, where when we first responded, it was, okay, we're going to go for 2 years of permitting and we don't start anything till that's done. We think we can start much sooner than that, and I think we can continue the discussions with the city manager and staff and come back with some milestones that are a little more in line with what the mayor has outlined.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Tate.
I don't remember in your chart, but who is your communications team?
Will Carroll Communications.
Is that in your chart?
I believe it is.
Okay, and then they'll be meeting regularly with residents?
They will.
Okay. And what did you say their name
Part
is?
of our development agreement is a monthly progress meeting with the staff. So we're going to run this like we run our projects, and the city staff will be part of that development team.
Yeah, I was more considering the residents, because I know, as Mr. Bashaw stated, communication is a key here for all of them. So you will be, Scott, did you?
Yeah, we have ongoing relations with that. In fact, that was kind of the onset of this. We established a communication basis with them.
Okay.
It's been ongoing throughout this process. It'll continue the same. I think Mr. Bashaw knows that.
Okay.
We stand with that. And our expectations are to have continuous updates, inputs,
Okay.
feedback. the whole-
I just wanted to have that on the record, and I agree with the mayor on those changes. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you guys for coming today, and we're looking forward to the project.
Mayor, last thing I'll do is I'll offer you an invitation for anyone that's on the East Coast, if you'd like to visit the headquarters of Forest Development. It's on a barge in the Lake Park Marina, and downstairs are the offices, and upstairs is a model of the Nautilus, and it's a pretty good rendering of what we got in mind for the Cape Coral project.
Sounds like a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the next item of discussion, which is 4B4, quarterly grant applications and management report, Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, this next item is a follow-up to a conversation that we had several workshops ago with regard to the city's efforts to obtain additional grant funding for a variety of city initiatives. And at that workshop meeting, we mentioned to you that we're going to be reporting back to you on a quarterly basis to let you know how many grants we applied for, how successful we were, and where we were with implementing grants that we have received. So kicking off the very first update is Mark Mason, who's going to quickly walk you through a series of slides to let you know how we've fared with grants since October 1st through December 31st. Thank you, Mr. Mason.
Yes, sir. Mayor, council members, Mark Mason, Financial Services Director. Real quick, number of grants we've applied for during the first quarter of fiscal year 2022 was 7. 6 of those were state grants, 1 was a federal grant. To date, there's no pending awards, although they're certainly in the pipeline, but they're not pending. Pending to me means that we've been awarded and we're waiting for the documentation. We have had one grant awarded to us. It was a state grant. So these are the list of grants that we've applied for. We've applied for an assistance to firefighters grant. Do you want me to read? You don't want me to read through each one of these. I mean, you have the information. So we've applied for a number of grants during the period, as well as, let's see. And so to date, and this is how many grants that we currently have in the pipeline that are being worked, is 55 grants, our active grants, total of $64 million, one of which is the $25 million that we got from the feds directly. So we have total available to draw to date is about $46 million. So I've provided you, based upon the departments and the information associated with each department of the grants that they are managing. So we have a number of grants. Development Services manages, mostly these are HUD grants, as well as the state housing grants. And for fire, we have a number of grants that are out there. Most of them are state grants, although we do have a couple of federal grants. Police, we have a number of grants, and both a mixture of both the federal and state grants. Parks, we have a number of grants that are out there as well, and a combination, mostly TDC grants for maintenance of our various park facilities, as well as one state boating infrastructure grant for the yacht club seawall improvements. Public Works, we have a number of grants included in here that are mostly sidewalk related, although we do have a couple of others that actually, they're all sidewalk related in one form or another, with the largest one being the Sun Trail program. And on utilities, we have a number of grants as well, including the American Rescue Plan Act. Again, this is for the pipeline that we'll be putting in that will service the CRA area. And also in the reclaimed water transmission for the river crossing. As we've been implementing our system, we've also have a grant management system, and within the past week or so, my staff has been updating that, and there's been a few more grants associated with the reclaimed water transmission that aren't on here. So there actually is about $10 million in grants that we've received from the state on the reclaimed water transmission line. So I want you to know that we're going to update this information. I think the most important thing with this is that we're going to be taking this information and putting it out there on our website. So you'll be able to see this on a monthly basis and see what's happening on a monthly basis, and then we'll come back before you on a quarterly basis and give you an update.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mason? Councilmember Tate?
Thanks. Mark, this won't include then the Tourist Development Council, or these the grants that we're going to be applying for?
It does not include the ones that we are going to be applying for. This is just on a quarterly basis. So as we update this on monthly, as our system, becomes a little bit more robust in getting our grant management program working, we'll be able to grab this information following the end of the month, put this information out there online. You'll see exactly what we've applied for, and what we've been awarded and what we're currently working on.
Okay, well, I know Councilmember Hayden, myself, and Maureen met with Dane Eagle, and he was extremely helpful, and I think have you had the first meeting yet? Maureen, have you all had the first Zoom meeting yet with the representative from Dane Eagle's office?
The city manager's new special projects coordinator has briefly discussed some of the parameters of the grant with the staff. We have a Zoom meeting scheduled, I think it's a week or two from now, but we've had communication back and forth on that grant.
Okay, great, yeah, that was extremely helpful, and I was so glad Maureen was there to kind of coordinate that. I think we learned a lot, and we have a lot of opportunities yet ahead of us, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Mason? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 4B5, which is the 2021 Utilities Master Plan.
Mr. Mayor, this is in follow-up to another previous workshop item in which you asked staff to go out and look at possibly sequencing some of the projected UEP work areas. And since our last meeting, we've had a series of conversations with other regulatory agencies with regard to the overall UEP master plan. And so based on those discussions, we're going to give you an update real quick on what we are continuing to recommend as our strategy for moving forward with utility expansion. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jeff Pearson to quickly walk you through that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Jeff Pearson, Utilities Director. Back on November 10th of last year, we provided a presentation at the Committee of the Whole meeting, and I believe at that meeting we pretty much received consensus from Council that the next area would be, of course, North 1, which is currently under design and will be going to construction later this year. And then, of course, the next area, we seem to have had a consensus on the North 3 area, which is along the western side of Pine Island Road and in the Burnt Store area. And at that time, Council directed us to look at possibly moving the North 11 area that we had in the plan ahead of the north, or ahead of the area 4. We did, as Mr. City Manager mentioned, we've had a number of meetings with various regulatory agencies, and we've looked at it very carefully. However, there are a number of factors that include, but are not limited to, the number of private septic tanks and wells density in some of these existing areas, constructability, financial, operating, and maintenance concerns that we had to take into consideration. This first slide, of course, is the proposed schedule that staff is still proposing based on our additional research. Our consultant that we've been working with is AECOM, and right now the schedule would be, of course, going to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on through North 12, and that would all be completed. Our goal is to complete all of it by 2045, which is a very aggressive timeline. One of the limiting factors on this slide, which shows the wastewater flow distribution for the UEP areas, at some point in the future, which right now we're projecting it would be the year 2035, we would have to have a new Northwest water reclamation facility online. That would be next to the current North RO plant. And those flows from North 6 and beyond, and potentially some flows from North 5, would be sent to this new wastewater facility. Otherwise, if we jump areas ahead of others. We potentially would have to construct large diameter force mains that we may not need later on once the new North Water Reclamation Facility would come online in 2035. So we are, that's one of the things that was very pressing in continuing with the original sequencing that we presented to council. Here's a summary of improvements through the year 2040. Some of these things, these are some of the things we have to do in addition to just going into a UEP area and putting in water, sewer, irrigation, lift stations, and other ancillary infrastructure. Some of these items include expanding the North RO water treatment plant capacity from the current 12 million gallons a day to 21 million gallons a day. Also, of course, building a new water reclamation facility, starting it out at 4 million gallons a day and having that online by 2035. And expanding that plant to 8 million gallons a day by 2040. Also constructing an additional irrigation canal pump station, which is going to be called Canal Pump Station number 9. Also, we will need to upgrade the Southwest RO capacity from the current rated capacity of 15 million gallons a day to 21 million gallons a day. And also, we are planning on expanding the north-south transfer station, aquifer storage and recovery system expansion area, which is right along Pine Island Road. That station allows us to pump water from the northern canals under Pine Island Road to service our canals, freshwater canals that are located south of Pine Island Road. Also, of course, we're going to need to put in additional water storage and transmission mains up near Entrada, and also a Del Prado reuse tank that's going to be in the Yellow Fever Creek area. And also another canal pump station will need to be built, and that's Canal Pump Station 11 up in the north area along, that's Gator Slough, which is the main canal that feeds all of the northern freshwater canals from US 41, and that's the canal we pump the water from the Southwest Aggregates Reservoir into. Here's a cost summary that we have. These are all just planning level costs in today's dollars for these projects and projects to support the UEP expansion. Running through build out, right now we're at about $5.5 billion. Sorry, I'm pushed the wrong button there. And here's a 5-year budget improvement outlook from next year through 2027. And we're looking at a little over $1 billion. And I've got some projects that we're going to need to do to support the UEP. And also I've got Hudson Creek shown on there. We're currently continuing to negotiate an agreement with Hudson Creek to basically that pipeline that's going to run up the Burnt Store corridor is going to be a backbone transmission main for water, sewer, and irrigation. It's going to allow us to open up that entire corridor for commercial development. And hopefully Hudson Creek's going to help us get there. There will be a short piece of section of pipe that we'll need to do beyond the Hudson Creek extension up to the Charlotte County lines that currently serve the Myriad RV Park. And also that will allow us to potentially purchase excess reclaimed water
from Charlotte County and be able to have an emergency interconnect in case the Charlotte County's Burnt Store plant were to go down, or if our North RO plant went down, we would be able to purchase water bi-directionally, whoever needed it. And also the Pine Island corridor is highlighted. We would need to put it, we've got a study on that already that was completed a few years ago that will either be built by developers or that will be a capital improvement project. And you've seen this slide. This is just a dashboard for our master plan rate and financial analysis. As you can see, beginning in FY23, currently we are projecting 3% rate increases beginning in FY23. And also, we would meet our 6-month O&M reserve. And also, we are assuming $1 billion in new borrowing needs for non-assessed projects from fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 40. And some of the assumptions that we're using is that the rate increases would apply to water, sewer, and irrigation user rates. We're assuming a 2% growth infill within UEP areas that are already built, a 4% annual inflation on CIP, 30-year revenue bonds, and existing impact fees would be used. The next steps are, we would, if we can get a consensus from council to move forward with the sequencing, we would finalize the utilities master plan. I spoke with AECom, they're here today. In case you have any questions for them, it's going to take them an additional 60 days to complete the plan, the document. We're already working on hiring a consultant to update the impact fees. Now that we know the costs, we can actually calibrate our impact fees now based on those costs moving forward. And we will need to adopt a new rate resolution beginning for fiscal year 2023, which we do an annual rate sufficiency analysis every year. So that will be part of that work that will be done. We will begin engineering design. Paul's group will begin engineering design and permitting for the North 3 UEP. Get that going so he can complete that quickly. And also, we're recommending performing a 5-year interim master plan update and a 10-year comprehensive master plan update. That way we can continue to look at where growth is occurring and potentially resequence areas if necessary. And I'm available for any questions that you have. Paul's here, AECom's here, and a couple of my staff are here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Any questions for Mr. Pearson or staff? Doesn't look like it, so it looks like we're good to go, and thank you for the presentation.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 4B6, severance pay, discussion regarding ordinance 18-22. I know this was a policy change that is on next week's agenda. I just asked Mr. City Manager to give us a little update on this before next week's meeting.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, as the Mayor mentioned, this item is scheduled for your adoption during your next week's City Council meeting during the public hearing component of the agenda. And essentially what this does is it provides your 3 charter officers, the City Manager, City Attorney, and the City Auditor, the ability to offer a severance payment to employees that do not successfully complete their probationary period. And let me backtrack. To non-represented employees that failed to complete their probationary period. In addition, it would provide us the ability to provide a payment in lieu of, I guess payment in lieu of notice, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm using the wrong terminology, Ms. Menendez. Basically, it allows you, when an employee submits a letter of resignation, in exchange for that letter of resignation, you can essentially provide them a one-time payment so they could essentially leave the organization at the time of resignation. So you are allowed by law to do that with employees. However, the law requires that your personnel policy reflect that, and so we currently do not have that practice incorporated into our personnel ordinance, and so your 3 charter officers are requesting the ability to do that.
Madam City Attorney.
So this would be potentially an opportunity to, as you know, most of these, a lot of these people would be for cause. Not all of them, not assistant city manager, not department directors, but everybody else would be for cause. And there's a process that's involved in that. And this gives you the opportunity with employees that, for whatever reason you think would be good candidates for it, to also be able to say to them, look, if you want to pick up the threads of life someplace else and you want to be able to do that pretty soon without everybody going through a lot of process that's going to be in your personnel file, which ultimately would happen, then you can offer them payment up to the 30 days, and everybody can just go on with their lives. So this is a tool to doing that we don't currently have now. So just to clarify, because I know he said something about notice, and if you're going to go through the process, you're going to have to be giving the notice. But this is an opportunity as an exit ramp potentially off that. I'm not saying that's the only time it would be used, but it is an opportunity in that direction.
Thank you. And if you could clarify, Mr. City Manager, did you say this was non-bargaining employees?
That is correct.
And could you let us know, does this policy, is it somewhere for our bargaining employees as well, or is this just non-bargaining?
So it's, at the moment, only for non-bargaining employees. That is something that we would have to open negotiations with the respective unions to include this in their contracts.
Okay. All right, any questions? Councilmember Tate.
So in your sole discretion, would you still notify us?
Notify you of
When you create this, provide the payment, you would still notify us?
if that's something that council desires, but I think that, at that point, we typically don't notify you of personnel-related.
Right, I was just asking, just to
So-
make sure. Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, for me, I don't really need the personnel aspect of the organization falls on you, so I don't think if you exercise this policy here, then I don't think we need to be notified.
Just to be clear, it applies to all 3 charter officers, myself, the attorney, and the auditor.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. We'll move on to item 4B7. This is a city charter review follow-up. If I recall, we've had one meeting already on this particular topic. I believe 2 or 3 of our council members were out on that particular day of discussion. So I thought it would be good, and I think there was a recommendation by the remaining council to bring this back for a discussion. So hopefully we can finalize exactly what we are instructing our city attorney to move forward with. And I think that's why we're here today. So with that being said, I'll let the city manager start off, and then we'll pick our discussion up from there.
Well, I don't really have a presentation for you today, Mr. Mayor. Your packet includes the 2 recommendations that were suggested by your charter review committee. And then we also attached just a memorandum where we were, if we were given a clean slate to look at the charter, what areas would we suggest that we revisit. And so we did that, and not that any of these are certainly of significant importance at least in the ones that were included in our recommendations. So let me know what method you would like to, how you would like to proceed. Do you want me to visit each of these recommendations individually, or you have all of these before you? So
Yeah, I think we've had that before, and I'm sure the rest of council has reviewed that documentation, so I don't think we need to be redundant to go through that again. And if I recall correctly, we kind of ended up with the council that was here that particular evening. The two items that I think that we thought that there was additional discussion that may be needed was for filling the vacancy. I think that was pretty much once we realized that our current charter does not meet the qualifications in the Florida statute, we know that we have to do something there. So I think that was pretty much unanimous that we wanted to move that forward. We had a recommendation by the Supervisor of Elections, and I think we have a good understanding how we can make sure that our charter reflects exactly what the state statute says as well. I can't remember exactly that particular night. I thought we were split on the line item veto, so I think we probably should have a little more discussion on that particular topic. And also, this is an opportunity, especially for those that weren't present that night, an opportunity that any other topic of discussions we could bring up as well in moving this forward and making a recommendation to the city attorney. I think one of the other items that a couple of the council members had brought up was the recording requirements as far as printed copies versus digital copies. That may be something we want to discuss because of the the times that we are in now. I remember this charter was developed many years ago when the technology wasn't there, so that may be something we want to discuss tonight as well. One other item that I was going to bring up to see if any council had an appetite for discussion, and I know I did bring this up in the charter review meeting, and our city clerk could probably clarify what our existing policy is on qualifications. My understanding that whether it's an appointment or if you're running for election and you file for your candidacy, you have to be a member of the community for a minimum of 1 year. Is that correct, Madam City Clerk?
It's 1 year prior to the year of the election.
Okay. And nowhere in our charter does it say that a particular district council member has to reside in their districts. I didn't know if that was a discussion. Technically, the day before qualifications, if you live in District 7, you can move to District 2 and run for District 2 council member spot, if I read the charter correctly. So I don't know, number one, if you're aware of that. Number two, if that's something that we want to discuss. For me, I think if you're running for a District 2 council member seat or District 7 or wherever it would be, you should have to live in the district for 1 year, similar to, and the only position that wouldn't include would be the mayor's spot. They would just have to live within the city. So to me, I think it's important enough to at least have that discussion. For me, I think that our charter should reflect that you have to live in that district for a period of 1 year if you're running for that particular district council member seat. So there are a few of the items that I know we talked about in the past. One particular item I thought we may want to discuss here tonight, and then the other items that you may have specifically. And the first individual, Councilmember Tate.
Thank you. I always thought that you had to live in the district that you ran, at least way back in the 90s, 80s, whenever it was. I thought that's the way it was. You had to live within the district that you were running for. So if that is not the way it reads in the charter, I would recommend that we put that in there. That is why we have districts. even though we represent everyone at large, I thought that that's always the way it was. The other thing is, if I could ask the city clerk, I remember at our last meeting, we talked about the removal of the line item veto, and most of us were here. Did we agree to remove that or keep it?
So I believe that was one of the reasons it came back to the meeting. There were 4 people that were in favor of the removal. There were 3 that weren't, and then the 8th person wasn't at the meeting.
Here. Okay.
I don't.
Well, I'm still in, gosh, I don't remember how I went on that, but can you check that out for me, Kimberly, and let me know, and I'll let somebody else talk? And then the other things that the city manager has in here are this, the other ones, they're mostly housekeeping, and I don't think, I want to remember that the voting ballot is going to be long enough, and they're going to get bored when they, and then they won't even vote properly if we put too much on there. So cleanup has got to be maybe for another time. The filling of the vacancies is definite. The district that you run in is where you live for 1 year, I agree with, and then the line item veto. Thank you.
Madam City Attorney?
My light was on, excuse me, my light was on from when Councilmember Tate said, I thought you did have to live in your district. You do have to live in your district. I think the mayor was just saying the year requirement doesn't apply to the district. And, but you do have to live in your district, and you have to keep living in your district during your term. But the year prior to the election is not written there, I think, for the living in your district. So his point is you can live in the city, and if you want to run for District 3, for example, you move into District 3 in order to qualify.
Yeah, no, I would think you would have to have had residency in the district for 1 year before you file.
Councilmember Nelson?
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree with you and Councilmember Tate regarding cleaning up the language in terms of where you're residing when you run, but it also needs to, if it doesn't already, include you got to stay there as when you serve. In other words, I can't. Oh, it does. Okay. Okay. So yes, I would agree with that. Line item veto, I also agree to keep. I think it allows our mayor the option to, delete something that, for example, comes up very quickly in a budget that maybe we didn't have all the information on or know, but it's trying to be pushed through a budget. I don't have any issue with keeping that. I kind of like that ability. I think it's a good move, just in case we have any issues in the future. Also, I was going to say exactly what you said regarding removing a council person for lack of experience, as we have learned, I know through our terms, Mayor, that yes, it does have to match the state statute, because that doesn't match. So I would agree with those things, and trying to see if there's anything. I think that's all you mentioned that we needed to focus on, right?
But the technology aspect, as far as
Oh,
printing.
gosh, yeah. I like everything electronic, less paper. I concur. Right? And this happened the day we were resorting at Cape Coral Hospital with our COVID, right? That was the cow. Okay. All right, just double checking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just to remind everyone, the line item veto, my understanding, it's only been utilized once in the history of Cape Coral. And that particular line item veto can be overridden by a majority vote of council.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. It's protection for all of us. I just think it's a good idea to keep it.
Okay. Councilmember Welsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I remember the conversation last time, and I was either way. I said yes on the veto. I could go either way, no on it, just for ballot fatigue. I don't think it really is that important to me to remove it. So I do have a question though for the city attorney. Say I'm in District 5 and I serve 2 terms and I move to District 4, I would not be eligible to run for District 4 for a 3rd term.
No.
So it doesn't affect your term limits at all where or what district you live in?
No, you can only run for council, a council member's seat, as opposed to the mayoral seat, 2 consecutive terms. That's not counting if one of those is, if like your first one is filling a vacancy. But if it's a normal 2 terms, then you only get the 2 terms, and then you have an opportunity, potentially, to run for mayor, and if you're elected to mayor, then that breaks the chain, and then the next election, you can run for a council seat if that's your preference.
Thank you. So to me, we represent the entire city. So if I were to live in District 5 my whole life, I know what's going on in District 2. So I don't know if we want to use a charter amendment in order to tie in the fact that you have to live in your district for a year in order to run for that district, because we do represent the city on a whole. What I would like to maybe have us do is find a third one that we could put on that we all agree upon. Like I said, I could remove the veto. I was for the digital, instead of paper, even though I'm a printer and I love paper. It's just easier, and it is better. I know one of the ones that I saw that I was interested in that might gain some discussion was giving the city manager the ability to hire and fire employees at will, which is more in line of what the state does. So that would be one that I would be positive for, and changing our charter to reflect more of how the state runs things. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Shepherd.
When it comes to council, I don't think you should have to live in your district for a year because, number one, I think we would be hurting the city. We don't have an abundance of people running for council positions right now, and in the future, who knows? And I don't see the negative. I see the positive of when someone's elected that they have to live in their district. But I don't see the negative if someone lives in a district for 6 months and then wants to run for that district, that we say, oh, no, you haven't lived there a year. I think that we would be hurting the city with that. I see a negative impact, not a positive one there. The way I look at my position as a District 2 council person, yes, I live in my district, but at the same time, all of us know that, I work on things throughout the whole city. I'm not just saying I only work for District 2, and that's all I represent. I represent the city as a whole, and I welcome all citizens, no matter what district they're in, to call me and work with me. So my opinion is it shouldn't be necessary for someone to live in a district for a year to run for that district. I think we would be hurting ourselves. I think there would be possibilities of someone very talented that can apply for a district, and then for us to say, oh, you only lived there for 6 months or 7 months, so you're not eligible. I'm not really keen on that, but that's just my opinion. But like I said, once they're elected, I feel they should stay in their district for their term. That's my opinion. Thank you.
How about the other items that the majority of us have been talking about? You have the digital component. You have the, of course, the timelines that must meet state statutes as far as the elections, special elections. And what was the other? The line item veto.
Yeah, I was in agreement with everyone else.
Okay, on those. Okay. All right, Councilmember Cosden.
Thank you, Mayor. Madam City Clerk, can you please remind me how many we can put on the ballot? How many?
Yes, on the primary ballot, up to 6, and on the general ballot, up to 1. And that is just for 2022.
Thank you. Okay. So we're dealing with precious space as we make this decision. For the line item veto, I want to see that removed. I've seen it, I haven't seen it used, but I've seen it threatened twice, both politically. It was ugly, and I didn't feel like it was a good use of power. And I just don't think, it doesn't make sense because council can veto veto anything in the budget as a whole. So it just doesn't, and council can override the mayor's veto, so why does it even need to be there? That's that. For the one-year residency requirement, I thought that was interesting. At first I thought, yes, I could get behind that, and then I realized in my case, I barely would have slipped through, because I think I moved into my district 11 months before I ran. And I'm not saying my case is the reason I wouldn't support it, but there, like Councilmember Shepherd said, you could miss out on a fabulous candidate, a fabulous council member, because of that requirement. People move all the time, but if they're in Cape Coral, I just don't think it makes that big of a difference, as long as they live in their district when they're serving. The technology one, I do think that's important. In fact, that's, to me, the most important one. I think we should include that. Am I missing anything, Mayor?
No, I think you covered them all, the line item veto, technology. I'm sure you support the timeline change for special elections, and then I think that was all of them.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayden.
My last? Is this it?
I don't know if I've given my recommendation.
Oh, Keith, okay.
And
right.
we can come back to you if you want to be
No,
last.
I'm
Okay, just.
It's so serious. It's a joke. I'm a big believer in only putting things on the referendum that have the biggest impact and that won't create confusion. I think the special elections has impact. I think the line item veto has the potential to create confusion, especially since we have the safeguard that council can provide majority, two-thirds majority to override that position. So I don't see any need to mess with something that's never used. It's never used anyway. The old guy agrees with technology and that we can keep things electronic. What else was there?
Living in the district.
Yeah, again, I think since it's in our charter that once you are elected, that you must be in your district, and Councilmember Welsh is correct, we do serve the city, and I'm going to remember that when you vote for redistricting, when that one comes up. Yeah, I don't see any need to provide confusion in there, and I think that's all it will create. Again, when you're talking about a general election ballot that's going to have several state referendums on it, as well as other things, and I'm not sure we want to really put anything on the primary ballot where we'll probably have a less number of people that actually respond based on past percentages. Yes, this will be the first time since '98 that we've gone to a midterm election for our city. We've already did the last election for the presidential year was the first one in, what, 24 years or so. So to me, the special election one, and does the electronic one have to go to ballot? All right. So I guess that might be one. I guess we'll have to look at which one goes on which, primary or general, since we're dealing with one on that. But those would be the only two for me.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Long.
Up yes to digital. I guess I wouldn't be in favor of altering the veto, because of the redundancies that were mentioned. Regarding the 1 year, I think I'm of the same opinion as some others, that I don't think it's the 1 year requirement is necessary. I think we serve at large, and I think the standard that we hold ourselves to, and I imagine the voters hold us to, anybody that might not have lived in that district for 1 year would be able to be confident enough to familiarize herself with anything that requires them to know that. I think it's interesting for me because myself and I think a couple others have been here long enough to think, well, we know the whole city, and I could see a situation where someone might be new, but that's where the requirement comes in, that they be a resident of the city as a whole for a year. So, yeah, I don't think I would be able to support the 1 year requirement for the district. Is that it?
Yep, I think so. And did I give you mine, Madam City Clerk?
So I have response for the live in the district. I have you as a yes.
Yeah, I think that one's dead.
Okay, yep, and I agree, yep. And then for the technology, I think you just brought the topic up, but I have.
Yeah, I'm for the technology aspect and putting the timeline on the ballot. Those would probably be the only two line item veto. I guess I'm like the rest of council, or some of council. It's barely used. Things that you should put on a ballot should be something of great importance. I don't really see that as a great importance. So probably just, my recommendation would be the digital component, the component where you are, as far as the timeline, to meet state statute, and I think that's all I'm correct. Yep. All right, Councilmember Welsh.
And you can ditto me on that.
Thank you, Mayor. I did bring up that one about the city manager having the power at will, and I asked for some feedback on it. I didn't hear from anybody if they were for it or against it.
Okay.
Because that would be a third one that I think we could put on the general election and let the people decide, whereas these other two could probably go on the primary election since they're more of a housekeeping.
Anybody have a appetite to add that particular item? I didn't hear.
Well, no.
I'm sorry? No. So it doesn't look like anyone else has a desire to move that particular item forward. Councilmember Welsh. Mhm. Okay, hopefully that gives City Clerk and Madam City Attorney some information. It sounds to me, looks like I have the City Attorney's light on, so I'll let you speak first.
So from what I'm hearing, there are two proposed charter amendments that will be brought before you in ordinance form for you to vote on. One is the filling of the vacancy, which I really think is important that communications, if that one goes through, the communications communicates to the people about that one, because I don't think the people are going to know why we're putting that on there. Not to advocate, but to communicate. And then the second one is the digital. There is a third referendum that will be being brought before you, and that's the one about the economic tax incentive tax. Now that's not a charter amendment, but it's another referendum that will be going. So we're not losing sight of that. It's not out in orbit someplace. It will be coming before you.
And I guess the discussion, and Madam City Clerk, maybe you were going to bring it up, probably need to know what particular election we're going to add any of those particular topics. I do know that April 25th is a deadline at 5 p.m., I believe, for the primary, for anything to be on the primary ballot. And July 11th is at 5 p.m. is the deadline for the general. So I guess my question, do we want to put them all on one? Since we got 6 and 1, do you want to put the two charter amendments on one and maybe put the other ad valorem on the other one? That's kind of how I'm thinking, but I'll open it up for staff. First, give the city clerk the opportunity since her light's on.
Thank you, Your Honor. That was my question.
Okay, Councilmember Hayden.
Yeah, I guess I'd put the two charter, package them together on the primary ballot and the economic incentives on the general.
Okay, Councilmember Tate.
I agree with that.
Anyone have a difference of opinion? Okay, looks like that gives you the direction that you're looking for, Madam City Clerk and Madam City Attorney. Thank you. All right, the last, well, actually, we have two items. Next item on the agenda, which is 4B8, which is a council media policy. I brought this forward, speaking with the city manager here recently. You know, we all know we have a communication division that we have recently implemented, and I think that it is imperative that we work side by side with our communications department as far as any type of communication involving our city. And also I think that we need to have a policy from council as well, how we move forward in any media communications when we are making a statement as a council member, not necessarily as an individual, but as a council member. So I asked the city manager first to maybe give us a quick overview of what the media policy is as a staff level, and also if you have any recommendations where we can coordinate council's media approach and staff's approach. So we're basically singing out of the same tune.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, with regard to the process we use for staff when communicating with the media, we are relying on a rather dated policy. It dates all the way back to 1998 in our administrative regulations that basically requires all staff members to funnel any contacts they have with members of the media through, they use the language, the PIO. And we know now that that's essentially been replaced by the Office of Communications. So from a staff standpoint, it's very structured, very organized. Everything has to be channeled through communications. They inform the city manager's office of any upcoming media coverage, and we in turn, alike to the extent we possibly can, we'd like to alert members of City Council ahead of time when media is working on a story that affects city government as an organization. So that's in place for city staff. In terms of City Council, typically what I have found is, based on my experience and review of policies elsewhere, is that the elected body will coordinate with the Office of Communications on press release, interviews and things of that nature, but also, like the mayor said, that council members, when they are in contact with the media, they make it clear that they are not speaking on behalf of the city council or on behalf of the organization, that they are merely expressing their views as an individual member of the city council. And what I have also experienced is that the city council typically, city council, city commission, county commission, typically will appoint either the chair of that governing body or the mayor to serve as the official spokesperson for the governing body, while the Office of Communications serves as the spokesperson for the city as a corporate entity. So I don't know if that helps, Mr. Mayor, if that muddies things up further, but I think it's pretty clear that, again, if someone is speaking on behalf of City Council should designate someone to serve in that role to represent City Council, and then staff through the Office of Communications does that for the rest of the corporate entity. Now, you can direct the mayor, since the mayor is essentially the chief elected executive for the governing body, or you could always assign an individual based on the topic that's at hand and their subject matter expertise. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. And whatever we decide to do, I think we need to have a policy collectively as a council, so we are all, whomever we are acting under the same policy, that whatever policy we put forward. And I think we should incorporate that in our council rules of procedures. That way it's clearly defined exactly what our policy is. And so that would be my recommendation. It's up to us to determine what that policy is, and that's why we're here today. One of the things that I think that we have to be careful of as well is we have to make sure that our opinion or approach in the media, because they are going to, whatever we say is gospel, and that's what they're going to take, and that may or may not be the case. So we have to make sure, I think, that we, first off, how I see this moving forward is the media outlets, if they want to talk to any of us, they must first coordinate that through our communications department. And then they will reach out to us and say, Mr. Mayor or Mr. Council Member or Ms. Council Member, we have a particular organization that would like to speak to you on this particular topic. So not only the communications department is aware of it, they could actually come to the interview as well, so they know exactly what the discussion is. And also, we can get whatever talking points from the communication to see what the city's perspective is on that particular topic. As we all know, none of us here serve individually. We're a collective body. So no matter whatever our statement is, whether it's me or anyone else that's speaking to the news media, and that's whether it's a televised or the newspapers, we're one body. That's how we work. And I think any statement that we give to the media should be as a body, not as an individual. If you want to speak as an individual, you have to make sure that you mention, this is my perspective as a citizen of Cape Coral. This isn't the perspective of city council or city management. And I think that's very important. So if we can coordinate these two together, maybe with the approach that I had outlined, where we have them actively involved in this discussion, and we both are on the same page, hopefully, and we both at least know what the other one is describing as far as whatever our opinion or view is. So that's how I kind of see this. Probably having one point person as our communications outlet would probably be helpful. I really don't have a problem personally if there's a particular topic of discussion that's in any one of our districts. I think I have no problem with council member in district that's maybe involving the 7 Islands, as long as they go through the communications department. You know, if they want to give their opinion or perspective on that particular item in their district. What I don't think we should be doing is I don't think that we should be, Councilmember Long should be talking about something that's occurring in the yacht club, because that's Councilmember Tate's district and responsibility. We should at least afford him or her the first opportunity to talk to the media if it's involving their district. If it's something as a city as a whole, then maybe I would be involved. Or if that council member says, you know, go ahead and speak, let the mayor speak on my behalf, that's okay. But I just think we have to set some guidelines up for us is basically what I'm saying. So I'll open it up, Councilmember Nelson.
So, Mayor, just to clarify, what you're looking for all of us to do is kind of give pointers, and then we're going to come back and formulate a policy, or will staff formulate the policy based on our comments up here, or how?
I think I will work with our
Okay.
city attorney's office to revise our council rules of procedures on whatever that policy that we come up with.
Okay.
So I think that's, you know, while we're here today, not saying we have to do it today. We can start the discussion. We could finish it today, or if you want to bring it back at a later date, that's fine too. But I think the end game is to develop a policy that mirrors something similar to what the staff does, and we incorporate it into our policies and procedures as a council, and that will not only help us today as a council, but that will help any councils in the future as well.
Yes, okay, so what I'm going to do is just give you a few recommendations that I've researched since I've been here, and we also have social media now too, that we need to kind of probably add into the policy. I know it's difficult because oftentimes we're tagged by many fan members on Facebook to discuss issues or talk about issues, and I can't probably tell you how many times I've reached out to Maureen saying, make sure my facts are right, because I want to say the right thing. I want to make sure my numbers are right when I'm addressing that. So I want to say that we need to include social media in there as well, because I think that's very important. Again, you know, like you said, especially, you know, if it happens on Facebook, it's real. So like you said, it's gospel if one of us say something. So I think we need to incorporate social media. The other recommendation I would have is absolutely, so for example, remember when we had 4 Mile Cove and we all went to the 2020 meeting and it passed through the committee at the county. Remember that, and the news reporters, ran up to me, and I said, well, it's his district. And I think that's true. I think we need to give that courtesy. And you're right, if the council member says, no, I don't want to speak, I'm not comfortable, you go ahead and do it, then that's fine. But I think we need to define a process in the policy that says, media reaches out to Councilmember A says, please go through our communications office then sets up the interview with particular, council member A, B, C, or D. I think that is a process that should be outlined in it. And I definitely love the idea of having a consistent message, and the only way you do that is through a consistent procedure where we go through the Office of Communications and we say, for example, I had a call a couple weeks ago, or I don't know, whatever day my eye blew out. I had a call from a reporter that wanted me to talk about homeless issues. And, I declined the interview only because I wasn't feeling well. But in situations like that, like if it's issues that they know you've worked on or that you're passionate about, I think we need to address that too. And again, oftentimes I'll type out what I'm going to say and I'll text it to Maureen during the day, and she'll bless it or not, or improve something or take it out. So I think that clear process needs to be identified in the policy as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, and real quick before I go to Councilmember Tate, one thing that we have to be careful about is, even though we're council members, we're still have the right to freedom of speech. And when you said social media, the first thing that came to my mind, if you have a social media account that says Mayor John Gunter, that's the perspective of Mayor John Gunter as a mayor or as a council member if you have one. Now, if you have an individual social media page that says John Gunter, to me, that's my personal view and my right for freedom of speech. So I think we have to be very, very careful here, because I don't think that, we want to go to that step.
Well, I just think I was referring more to, I have a political page for council. So oftentimes when I'm tagged, regarding some issue, or most of the time misinformation on a particular issue, whatever I'm going to type, I've always send it to Maureen, and just say, can you please look at this before I hit send, because I want to make sure my numbers are correct. So I do that. So I guess that's what I mean, is just, again, making sure we have our facts straight and making sure that we have a consistent message, whether it's social media or media, television, radio. Just make sure our message is consistent and the same and correct, with the correct information. Because, as a council person, the last thing you want to do is be spreading false information. I mean, unfortunately, people do that, often when it comes to a lot of our issues. So I just want to make sure we're consistent. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Tate.
Thank you. I really don't know how to start this, but what happened last week is kind of what prompted me to want to have this discussion. So when we meet with the city manager one-on-one, it is a private meeting, and it's private information the way I look at it. So I think if what he tells me during that meeting is something he wanted to send out a press release on or media on, he would have done it that way, but instead he's meeting with me privately. So it got pretty much out of hand in my district last week, and I was called by the newspaper and asked for comment and clarification. I immediately asked them to call Melissa. And when they said she wasn't available, I said, well, let me call her and make sure that she is available. And then she got a hold of them, and that was fine. But the misinformation that went out last week was, it just turned into a nightmare for all of us. And then what happens is the city, although they weren't prepared to give the information, now they're playing catch up and they do have to give the information out. So it just caused a lot of turmoil in my district, in my life, and the phone ringing off and on. So we really need to establish a chain of command and how we're going to address these issues. To me, the simplest thing is to call communications. Our city manager has gone above and beyond to create a communications team, and now we have a PIO. And so why we wouldn't all use them and all look more professional is something I don't quite understand. And like I said, what we learn and what we say in public should be, remember that we're council people, not citizens just giving out our opinion. I don't know if that makes perfect sense, but we do need to clarify this.
Thank you. Councilmember Welsh.
Thank you, Mayor. It'd be interesting to see how this gets written up, because I believe that as elected officials, if the media outlet wants to reach out to us, they have their ability to do so via email, phone calls, everything like that. When we take the oath that we all stood there and took, we promised to be professional, and we promised to give our best for the city. So I think we've already done that. As far as who they contact, point of person, that would be okay. That, you know, media outlet needs to reach out to communications first, but then saying that has to go to District 5 before it goes to District 1, before it goes to District 6. I think if, that's what I'm really interested to see how it gets written up. But I would like to keep it as minimal as possible if it goes into the you know, code of conduct, is that maybe we put in there that we, you know, remain professional, we talk as a council, and if we have a personal opinion, we make sure we reflect that as personal and not a council decision. So that to outline exactly in depth, I think is a little bit of an overkill. But we'll see when it gets written, and maybe I can give you a little bit more guidance or express how I really think then, but that's about it.
Okay, Councilmember Long.
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess I might need a little clarification here. I thought the train was headed to a different station. So originally, I guess, with what I understood the recommendation of, or at least the explanation from the city manager to be, was that there was sort of a unified point as far as the communications from council. And then I thought maybe I'd heard that same sort of direction from the mayor, and at some point it shifted to, well, unless it's your district. But I mean, if we partition it out by districts, then that defeats the unified individual, unless it's a collective. I mean, a lot of stuff is broken down into districts. Sure, we, as a council, may be interviewed on something that affects the whole city, but in particular, that still kind of defeats having one unified spokesperson, so to speak. That might be not be the appropriate term. So if you could maybe clarify, or maybe the city manager, is that, so would it be the recommendation then to maybe have an individual speak? You had classified it as maybe someone's particular expertise, a certain individual from council, then maybe they would be delegated to speak, but other than that, have one unified point, which to me is different than, oh, well, if it's in their district, then they can talk about it.
Well, based on my experience, I've actually experienced both, okay? And so I've worked in jurisdictions where there was a really strong, because they were elected from single-member districts, there was a strong effort to channel any formal district-level communications with the district representative. But then again, the chair of that governing body, whether it was a county commission chair or an elected mayor, served as the official spokesperson for that governing body, while you still have a staff component that represented the corporate entity as an organization, if that makes sense. So I think, you know, it's unique here because, you know, we don't have single-member districts. All of you are elected citywide, so I think that changes what I'm used to dealing with, at least. But that, you know, ultimately is a call of city council. So you're discussing how you plan to police each other with respect to media relations. We're here to support whatever direction you choose to head in.
Sure. No, I understand that. I just wanted clarification. For me, if we did go in the alternative and we said, well, you know, we can continue to kind of speak on things in our respective districts, it was mentioned to sort of make an effort to, I guess, indicate to the press that this is our personal opinion, so to speak, on behalf of council. That sounds great, but is that something that they're actually going to publish or print in every individual article? No. And that's not, even if they did, I think it would be taken as we're speaking as what we are, which is the reason that they're asking us the questions. So I think that kind of becomes cumbersome as well if we want to go down that avenue. Regarding the social media thing, I think we might be getting into the weeds a little bit. I respect the desire to do that, but I guess we'll see how it all plays out.
So what was your recommendation?
I'd like to kind of continue the discussion.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out where we were headed before I...
Okay. All right. Councilmember Shepherd.
At first, I thought it was a good idea to have a policy, but the more I think about it, I think it's a bad idea. I believe that when one of us stumbles, we're a team, and none of us are perfect. And if I think education, we're having an education right now on how it's important to make sure information you're putting out is correct. I think that's all we need to do, is re-educate all of us. Hey, be careful when you speak to the media. I'm against the policy because we were all elected by the citizens of Cape Coral. I was elected for my opinion and what I think and where I think the city should go. And I would never want politics to enter into where the majority of the council has a certain feeling, but because of a policy and the person that doesn't agree has an issue with talking to media. I just think education is important. I think when one of us stumble, that we should just have a talk and say, hey, we got to be careful with this or that, understand the ramifications of our words, and how sometimes you can say something and the media can, really runs with it, or, changes it slightly. And so I understand what happened, and I agree it probably shouldn't have happened, but at the same time, I don't think it's a reason to create a policy, because I think once we go down that road, the more I dwell on it, it just becomes more impossible, I think, to come up with a policy. I could be wrong, but when I try to put a policy together to police that, seems to create a lot of other things that I don't agree with. I'm going to repeat, none of us are perfect. I think everyone sitting up here, their intent and their goal is to do what's right for the city. I think all of us, I pretty much know all my colleagues up here. I got to know them over the past year, and I think everyone up here is passionate about doing the right thing. I don't think anybody has any bad intentions, and we're all not perfect. So I think when one of us slip, I think together we should say, hey, we should put it out there and educate and say, we can't do that. But to try to create a policy, I think, is going to be very difficult. I ran it through my mind repeatedly about how to create a policy and where to go with it, but I can't think of a way to do it. I mean, if somebody has a way create a policy, I'd be glad to look at it and see if it's something that I would implement. But we have to remember, even though we're a team, individually we were all elected. So we're a little different than the city manager and the policy he has with his staff, because they're an organization and they have a leader. We are a team, an elected body, but we are all individual leaders. And people put us here because of what they like about each one of us and how we think individually. So I think a lot of us are going to stumble sometimes. But I think what makes our team strong is that we recognize when one of us makes an error, and together we put the fire out and we educate. So that's all I want to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cosner.
Thank you, Mayor. When I think back to the times that I've spoken to the media in the past 6 years, it's not always been related to my district. So I just want to keep that in mind. There's a new autism center. It opened a couple of years ago. They interviewed me because I'm a leader, but also because I'm an autism mom. It's not in my district, but I still did that interview. I've done stuff in my district, a new traffic light in Del Prado. But then I think what's most important to the public is interviewing council members after meetings when the vote is not unanimous. People want to hear what was in the mind of the person who voted against XYZ. And so I think I did an interview about the Chiquita lock and why I didn't support its removal. And I think that kind of thing is important, and that would never go through the main person because I'm the person they want to talk to. So I understand where you're coming from, Mayor. And I really think the big thing here is that we should all go through the Office of Communications. We should all always do that. It's helpful, it's free advice, talking points, information that you're not going to get wrong, because like Councilmember Nelson, I want to make sure I have the right numbers before I answer questions. So in my opinion, any one of us should be able to at any time speak to the media if 100% of the time we're going through the Office of Communications. And of course, it makes sense to have the mayor do something if it's citywide. And of course, I'm not going to talk about the yacht club, but I think that's common sense. The point person only speaks for all of council if council agrees 100% on something, but that's not always the case. So that's where I stand. I would be interested to see a policy. I just don't know how I would feel. It would depend on the specifics.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hayden.
So when I was elected 16 months ago, I think most people knew I was going to come at this with a different perspective. I was in the media for 41 years. I knew what it was like to call a PIO office and not have that PIO person get back to me for 2 days, which meant I wasn't able to talk to an official for several days on information I thought was important to get out to the public. I know what it's like to call an elected official and not have them get back to me for 2 or 3 days. Again, curtailing a newspaper or a media outlet's main responsibility, which is to disseminate information. That's their only goal in any of this. Most of my colleagues up here know, and most of the public knows, that I said when I was elected that if the media ever called for an interview and I was available, I was going to do that interview because I knew how important it was to share what I believed important information to the public. Aside from passing what we believe is a budget that works for this community, our absolutely most important things that we do in this community are communicate, be transparent, and be accountable to our residents. And anything that curtails that, to me, misrepresents what our job is and misrepresents what we do to the public. So any policy that provides any sort of a script or any sort of boundaries on what we do, to me is wrong, because now I've seen both sides of this at a higher perspective than most people up here. I know tonight's conversation is directed to what I did last week, talking to the media about the yacht club, because I thought it was wrong to wait a couple weeks to let people know that one of the most popular venues in our city was probably going to be able to stay open longer, because, which is out of our control, we weren't going to get the proper permits to begin our construction. And to think that a popular venue like that is restricted to one district is ridiculous to me. If someone wanted to talk to another council member about things happening at Palmetto Pine, to me that's fine, because it's important information that should be shared with the community. We represent the entire community, not a particular district. The district boundaries only provide an easier way for a resident to communicate with someone because it focuses on that particular district. I try very hard for every media interview that I do to make sure I have the right information. I don't believe in 16 months that I've provided an inaccurate report to the media. I have called our communications office several times to get bullet points on things that maybe I wasn't clear about or that I wasn't sure about. What I need to do a better job of, policy or no policy, is letting the communications office know that I'm doing an interview with the media because a lot of them will happen quickly. They could happen in 20 minutes, they could happen in 30 minutes. I didn't do that last week. I did the interviews because I thought it was critical information that needed to be shared immediately. You can debate back and forth whether I was right or wrong, and, you know, I accept that. But, you know, I'm always going to value information that goes to the community more than how it might impact me. So these discussions are nice about policy. If something beneficial comes from it, that's great. But I will always be opposed to anything that scripts responses, limits communications, restricts how we are able to communicate to the public. You know, the key line in the media communications policy that we got was for city employees. I understand the reasons for staff and department heads to be on the same page if they happen to be talking to the media. But realistically, the voices and the faces that are usually out in front of the public are the council members, because we're the ones that are elected. What happens internally with staff and how they present their message to me is completely different than what we do up here as a council. So I don't know where this is going to go, from here, but completely understand that my role in this is to communicate valuable information to the community, and that's all that this is ever going to be about. And one of the reasons I was going to be accessible to the media was that you know, I knew my other council colleagues worked. This is my job. I knew I was going to be available. I always encourage the media to reach out to the other colleagues, my other colleagues, to talk about the issues, because it is my opinion. It is my opinion only. And you know, I never want to be looked at as a city spokesperson. Only a council member that cares about his community and wants to share information, just like it was when I was a journalist. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Long.
Thank you. I guess you had asked what my recommendation would be, and after hearing all this, I think I agree. I think we all should be afforded the opportunity to speak to the public. I don't think the purpose of this conversation was by any way an effort to try to curtail the dissemination of information to the public, but rather to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page. I think we understand that, but by way of maybe moving forward, something that we could, you know, gain out of this, I would agree with Councilmember Causen. I think maybe in the forms of just a policy, maybe just something simple as everything kind of goes through them with regards to meeting with them first. I don't think there's any harm in meeting with the Office of Communications before we speak with the media. It's not necessarily for a script, but maybe just to be sure that you're informed. For example, to me, even something simple, Councilmember Hayden had just said, oh, well, he thought it was important to bring to the attention of the public that we, you know, the yacht club was going to be able to be open longer because we didn't get the permits. Well, that could be conveyed a certain way that maybe the communications would have said, hey, it's not that we couldn't get them, it's because there's been a delay in the timeline, or we're waiting in the queue and there's a long queue. So if the media just prints that we couldn't get the permits, for example, that might be something that, for example, if you spoke with the communications department beforehand, they would say to make sure, which is the accurate representation is, hey, not that we didn't get them, but that we're waiting on them. So yeah, I would say if there was a policy to come from this, my suggestion would be maybe just before speaking with them to check in and make sure that we've got all the accurate information on that particular topic before we discuss with the media. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to know, I want to hear from Maureen or someone in communications. I want your recommendations. I mean, I want you, I know you've worked in Fort Myers, you worked with the PD there. I'm sure you worked with Chief at the time. You know, what would your recommendation be? Because I think we're right in that we all just want to make sure we're sharing the correct information. And in terms of Councilmember Hayden's comments, you know, regarding, I don't think it's that we want to squelch us talking to the media. I just want to make sure that we have a consistent message that protects our brand. And maybe that's a little too corporate when it comes to government, but I would love to hear your opinion.
Okay. Mr.
City Manager? I believe that, as the Mr. City Manager mentioned earlier, that whatever all of you decide will certainly support you. I can tell you it's very helpful from a communication standpoint when we have some notification that one of you or maybe multiple will be speaking to the media. The reason that that's helpful, and I know sometimes it can't always happen before the fact, right? As Councilmember Cosden mentioned, a reporter might approach you after the meeting. You might not have the opportunity to speak to somebody in communications before you speak on camera. The reason that can be helpful is because if the Office of Communications receives follow-up questions, we understand where that's coming from and why they're asking. We also, staying on the same message and staying consistent is important. And if one council member has spoken to the media about a topic and maybe another council member later that day speaks on the same topic, maybe their opinion's different. If we can understand that, that helps us to explain things to the media.
Sure.
So I just find it helpful to the staff and the Office of Communications, and I think overall that helps the city when information, of course, is accurate and it's consistent when we can. And I think for the most part that seems to happen, not all the time, but I do think that generally that does occur.
Come on, who texts you the most with what to say? I'm kidding.
It
I'm
would be
kidding.
you.
I know. So Mayor, with that said, do you feel like you have a good direction with the recommendation from our communications team in terms of how we want to move forward with this? I'm just curious. I mean, again, I just want to say to Councilmember Hayden, I don't think the purpose is to stop us from talking to the media in terms of, speaking about something that isn't in your district. Like we said earlier, maybe it's just a simple common courtesy. But you're certainly, as the mayor said, we have freedom of speech, so you can certainly speak to whomever you want. But, just maybe in the spirit of team and collaboration, you might want to reach out, to that council member. I don't know. I'm just curious, Mayor, do you feel like you kind of...
Well, I think what I've heard in our discussion here, that keeps as a common denominator is we should probably utilize our Office of Communication. I think possibly a good policy moving forward is, and the Office of Communication will have to put this out to the news media in our area as well. I think that any time that the news media wants to interview any of us, they go contact the Office of Communication and express their desire to have an interview on whatever the topic may be. And they could even express whom they want to speak with. And then the Office of Communication contacts us. And they can accompany whoever the interview person is in the meeting, and we can have whatever type of interview that we're going to have. If it's on a particular topic, then the council member will just say that this is my perspective, opinion on this particular topic, and go in that fashion. But I think what we don't want to do is we don't want to be reaching out to the news media on a regular basis to disseminate any type of information that we want. I think if the news media contacts our Department of Communications, and then that trickles back down to us, they can be a part of that interview. They can talk to the council member or to myself, the mayor, to make sure we have the necessary and accurate information, so we make sure that we always put that accurate information out. So maybe that's a way that we move forward for now. And then that way, each one of us still has the opportunity if we want to weigh in on a topic. But we know we start with the Office of Communication. If after the meeting today, if somebody from the news press wants to come over and interview me, I think what we should do is contact the Office of Communication first. They'll discuss what that is, and then we can go in that fashion. That way they're in the loop. I personally don't believe that we should be calling up the news media every chance that we have to disseminate whatever type of information. I think we're a collective body. I think we should be working with staff to make sure we have the same voice, and we approach it that way. When we are reaching out to news media to disseminate information, and we do it on a frequent basis, to me, that's, I can honestly say as a council member, I could count on one hand how many times I talk to the news media as a council member. And I could probably tell you the topics. I think there were 3 different topics. Tropicana Park, that wasn't in my district. The 47th Street project, they were probably the 2, and the China trip.
And
They were the top 3.
oh, the top 3, oh, okay.
Yeah, the top 3
Okay.
that I was reached out to. So to have a constant dialogue with the media, for me, I never had it. I think that we just want make sure that we have one voice, and we make sure that the Office of Communication is engaged in those interviews. But if the news media wants to call me and said, hey, I want to get an interview over the phone, the first thing we need to do is, let me get with the Office of Communications, we'll call you back in an hour. They can get the same information in an hour that they can get right now.
Sure.
So that's how I see
Okay.
it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So the only time that I would call the communication department is for information that we didn't broadcast as a team. For instance, dates or final decisions on topics or things that I feel I don't have the right to put out there. But if a reporter just shows up in front of my face to ask, what my feelings are on different topics, I'm not going to call the communications department because that's my personal opinion. So I think we're just talking about situations where it's certain projects or things taking place in the city where exact timelines and decisions haven't been determined by the mayor and council and the city manager. So it's just there. That's what we're talking about.
Mhm.
It's not every single interview. I mean, because I've been interviewed and asked opinions on multiple things, and I let it known that it's my personal opinion. But when I'm asked about things even after we vote, and there has been a final answer, I normally would say to contact our city representative because they will have the facts, because I don't want to misspeak, when it comes to dates and timelines and things like that. So that's why it's hard for me to come up for us to come up with some kind of policy. I think it's just give us all a refresher to be careful what we talk about, and use good quality judgment.
Okay. So it sounds like that a majority just wants to,
Highlight on one more
Councilmember
time.
Tate?
So I just want to be clear. First of all, Councilmember Hayden, I know you're the only one in the office a lot of the times, but all of us work, and yes, but we all have cell phones. So I think that, we'll be able to communicate if we need to. And I appreciate when you're around, and I know sometimes I just say, call Councilmember Hayden, he'll talk with you. But I think the larger picture is what comes out of the city manager's office in meetings, and that was what happened on this particular instance. So had the Office of Communications sent that out properly, we wouldn't have got all the snide comments on social media. And we got a lot of snide comments, because they all came to me. And that was because it wasn't vetted properly. And that's what I would I don't care who says what. I mean, it's in your district, it's not in your district. I really just want to get it right from the get-go. So if it's coming from the city manager's office on a topic, it's correct information. And then there's no question. So as far as, you speaking to the media or me speaking to the media, that's up to you. If you feel that you're qualified to do it, like if somebody calls me on median programs, I tell them to call Councilman Shepherd. I don't know anything about that. So it just depends on what your level of comfort is. But for me, the biggest thing is what comes out of the CM's office that he tells us, and then the delay time that we feel that it should get out to the media. I mean, like Seven Islands, Mr. City Manager, you put it on the agenda, it became public. The whole world knew about it yesterday. I read it in all the papers. So there was nothing for you to share on social media or coming from the PIO office or the communications office that we didn't already know, because it was all out there for everyone to see. The presentation was out there and everything. But with something like what happened last time, that information was not out there, and we just didn't look professional when we sent it out. And that's my point, is we should always look professional, and we should always be playing on the same field. So I appreciate having an Office of Communication. I plan to always use it, and I'm grateful that this city manager has taken it upon himself to build such a great team. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, we have to be careful of the information that we give out, you know, because it's more than just us. More than just me, it's more than just any other council member. It's this council, it's a direct reflection of this council as a whole. And, you know, we just have to be aware of that. I do know, you know, as far as the information, we do get privileged informations in our meeting. And just because we don't share every little piece of information in our weekly meetings, that doesn't mean that we're not being transparent. That just means it may not be the time to put that information, whether it's because we don't have all the information or we're trying to still get clarity on that information. It's not that we're trying to hide anything. I'll be the first one to say open and transparent government, I think, should be a priority for us. But there's a time and a place for everything. And I think that's what is most important, to make sure the time and the place, the accuracy of the information is correct. And that's not for me to decide. That's not for any one individual. That's collectively we have to decide that. I know if I was the city manager and I was giving information to a council member and they were disseminating that information to the public and I didn't want it, what are you going to do if you were in his shoes? I know what I would do. I wouldn't give you no information. We'd come in the room and we'd talk about the agenda and that would be it. I don't think any of us wants to get to that point. I want that flow of communication between the city manager. So I don't want any one of us to taint that open line of communication because of their maybe giving that information out. So it's bigger than just that one person. So I think we just, we have to keep that in check. And I think we've had the discussion today. I think maybe the best way to move forward is for all of us to make sure we engage in the Office of Communication, try to keep everyone in the loop, and then we'll see how we move forward from here. If we have another issue, we'll bring it up for discussion. All right, moving on to the, looks like the last item Mr. City Manager wanted to add was the recent implementation of our EnerGov system. So whomever...
Mr. Mayor, we have staff here who are willing to give council an update on the new EnerGov system and permitting system.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. For the record, Amy Yearsley with the Department of Development Services. So we're here to kind of give you an update on our EnerGov implementation. We've reached the culmination of this multi-year project to convert from our legacy eTrackit system to our new EnerGov system. IT and DCD staff worked diligently over the weekend to launch the software, and we went live officially on Tuesday as anticipated. This is day 2. We've run into a number of issues that we are working through at this point. Today, the major issue, and I think some of you had been copied on an email or had had some communication with contractors today. The major issue that people are facing right now are people that have multiple licenses and they're not able to see their permits that are associated with their license. I believe that as of just prior to coming up to this meeting that we figured out what that issue is, especially for the one contractor that did reach out to the mayor's office. And I think we have a solution to how to correct that and get anyone who is having that problem back on track to be able to see their permits, schedule their inspections, check their statuses. Another issue that we're looking at is just the volume and the backlog. We already had a processing delay because of the sheer volume of permits that are coming through our office at this point, which you all are aware of, shutting down prior to the cutover, and the number of users in the system. So that kind of bogged down the system. We had never had the number of people that went on yesterday in our system at that point. So you had all your staff come online, and you had all the contractors come online at the same time. Our IT department is working on that. They did some things today. Michelle is here. She can answer more technical things than I can. But they think we're working towards dealing with the speed, which is also impacting our ability to how fast we can help our contractors and process permits. Permits that had previously taken maybe 3 to 5 minutes to process, we're taking 30, 45 minutes to process. So as we work through that, I think we will see those numbers improve and the backlog improved. We also had just minor issues with our configuration and our roles that are easily addressed by our staff. Right now, things that we have done to kind of deal with this, we have set up a hotline that people can call. It is manned by 2 staff. There are 4 people that are tasked with it. So they can rotate out for breaks and also lunches. We've worked very closely with our communications department, and we will continue to do so, to set up the website, to set up little videos on how to register, instructions, guidebooks, frequently asked questions that are constantly being updated. And we have just, as of yesterday, set up an online or an in-person kiosk for people that come in, so we can help them, show them how to register, and show them how they could input their own permits into the system, which would get them processed faster. One of the main selling points of this software is that it provides the contractors more opportunity to input their information, have it come right to us, ready to process and start reviewing and getting it out the door, instead of us serving as basically staff and for the contractor and inputting all of their information and adding all their attachments and things like that and processing it through. So that's kind of where we are right now. Staff is working very hard and to make sure that we address everything and we can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. One being, is the public still free to walk into the permit office, or is it by appointment only?
Right now, we are at appointment only at this point.
And how
They can
long?
make it on the QLIS system, the application, or make their appointments on the QLIS system. We don't have an anticipated timeline. The number of people that were in the queue yesterday far exceeded what we possibly ever could have got to. I believe at 3 o'clock, there were 60 people still sitting, waiting to get processed yesterday. So that's why we had to make the call to go to an appointment-only system and encourage people to take advantage of the CSS, which is the citizen side, to apply. Because if they use that system, they will get through faster and they will immediately start being processed.
Yeah, because I think it's important that we got to make sure that we get back to that open time frame where anyone can walk through the door. You know, I understand that being shut down for a few days, there's a backlog generally just with that. I think the system will be great once we get it up and running 100%. Like anything, there's going to be a few stumbles. I'm confident that we'll get those worked out. But one thing I want to make sure is that, you know, we're open for business when someone walks to the door, that we can try to help them. I understand you only have the capacity for so many people. That's probably why we had that big influx of people this week maybe, but hopefully by next week, we hopefully get back to some type of normalcy.
Vince Cotero, I just wanted to supplement
Yes, sir.
what Amy said and what you said, Mr. Mayor. You're going to hear us a lot say CSS. That stands for Citizen Self-Service. That's the portal that we hope everyone will use at some point in the future. So as Amy stated yesterday, the system just started to get so intensely bunched up with people trying to get on electronically, coming to the counter, and you heard the explanation that she gave on how we're handling it. But we really want people in time to learn about CSS and what it can do. We want to get people out of the lobby unless they have to come. And for example, I did speak to one contractor yesterday, and even though there were a lot of issues and we're working through those, I reminded him that this is what we want the contracting community to get used to first. The citizens might do it if they have a one and done and they have to do it. Oh yeah, I'll go online and do it. They're not regulars. The regulars are the contractors. And if they can do that as soon as we're in a position where everything's running smoothly, to do it on a regular basis, that they're going to see greater efficiencies in the system. And one of the things about this system is that people are starting to adjust to, even on the second day, is that with the old system with Track It, there were fewer questions, so you might have been able to see a permit over the counter in 5 minutes. Well, it takes a little bit longer to enter that information now because the system actually is more efficient because there's more things that are being populated, which will help us get it out quicker. I know it may sound a little odd what I just said, but it really is more efficient and that will help us. So somebody standing at the counter saying, well, last week it took 5 minutes, why is it taking 20 minutes for you to do that? It's because the way the system is set up. But if people do it on their own, they're not waiting at the counter to do that. So that's where we're going with this.
Yeah, I know that's what your ultimate goal is, and I think that the contractors, like you said, will probably utilize this system more so than the average individual in a community that, say, is pulling a fence permit. And they come here, might be the second time they've ever been to the permit center. They're not really going to have an appetite to learn that process probably. They're probably going to want to walk through the door and file in person. Also, you're going to have individuals that are old school that aren't computer savvy. You know, we have a large population of retirees in our community. So I think the private sector, I think you'll see less people utilize the online system. I think most of the contractors and the permit runners that do this on a daily basis, I think every one of them wants this to get used to this system or utilize it. So I just want to make sure that we're covering and have the availability, no matter if you're a person that pulls several permits a week or it's an individual been here for 10 years, this is the first time he or she has done it. I just want to make sure that we have that, provide that service on both ends. And I think we are. So, Councilmember Tate.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you all. I mean, I know it's been a huge process, and today I got an email from Mr. Johnson from the CCCIA, and he said that you all have been extremely cooperative, and the mayor's been helping, and that they're working through it, and the building official's been great, so I appreciate that. I also logged in. I had no problem getting an account, although I had to be approved, and that was a private account, not a personal account. I didn't know how that worked, but it said pending approval, so I don't know if citizens are going to have that same thing, because I registered as a realtor, not as a private person, so, I mean, not as a government person, so I don't know if you know that. And then today, I was trying to find an RV permit, and that was an act of Congress. And it still doesn't exist. It's in code enforcement, which no person would really think of to look in code enforcement. And then when you go there, it still says e-track it, so you gotta, really, it's not e-track it anymore. So when you go into building permits, the first thing it says is e-track it. And then you go e-track it and it takes it somewhere else. So some of the language has to be cleaned up, but the biggest thing, I think, for non-construction workers is going to be little snippets. Here's where you find the RV permit. Here's where you find the garage sale permit. Those things are buried within those. When you go into it says permits, and then you go into documents, and you get like 50 different documents, and then you have to scroll down each one. So things that residents are using rather than contractors, because contractors, once they get it, they're going to get it. But residents who might just apply every now and then for something, if you can have a little cheat sheet in the corner, because when you go to I want to find, and then you go to building permits, it takes you to E-Track-It, and then from E-Track-It, it takes you to EnerGov, and then from there, good luck. So just on those couple of things, you might just put them out there. But I know y'all are doing a wonderful job. I saw the delay today, so I assumed how many people were on the system. It was a lot. But thank you, and just look at those couple of things.
I will do that.
Councilmember Long?
Thank you. Yeah, listen, I know it's been quite a eventful few days for you guys, so I first want to appreciate and acknowledge you guys' efforts through all this. By all accounts, I think I've heard some great things as far as how you guys are handling it. To follow the mayor, I think, I've got every confidence that this is going to be a benefit at the end of the day. My priority would be to, for those that aren't going to be wanting to get onto the system, to get back into, to open up the lobby to be able to walk in rather than the appointments. What kind of timeline are we realistically looking at there? I mean, I've got a resident here that says that he had an approved permit, went to go pick it up and only could find the closest appointment was March 7th. I mean, that's several weeks out.
Well, we want to get better, but, we're at that, but I can't give you a timeline on that, and because I'm just not comfortable. I don't want people waiting 6 and 7 hours, or even 2 or 3 hours in the lobby, and we're very hesitant to do that based on past experiences and the amount of complaints that not only you receive, but we receive on a daily basis. Somebody told me yesterday they tried to get on the tax collectors for an appointment, and it was March 22nd. So.
But not the city, and there's a number of different things going on.
This is technology. They want people to be able to use the system
I understand.
themselves.
We're on the same team. I just want to make sure that we can get that done as quickly as possible. I know you guys are doing everything you can to make that happen. Thank you.
Yeah, the other thing too, Mr. City Manager had elaborated a little bit today, was possibility of Saturdays doing, we haven't really figured out what we're doing on Saturdays, but could you explain
We
that a
haven't
little
figured
bit?
that out yet. We have to work on that. We have union issues with that. We have to consult with the unions.
Yep.
I have 4 bargaining units. I've already had preliminary conversations with HR staff about it. I don't have the ability to go in and direct people and say, you're working 410s.
Okay.
We have a lot of ground to cover in that area.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and I think to sum it up, Mr. City Manager, I think, we're just trying to get the doors back open so people can get in there. I want to thank staff for everything. I know, this has been at least a 2-year project. I think once we get the kinks worked out of it, I think it will be phenomenal. So we just hope that the residents are patient, the contractors are patient, but we need to try to get the doors back open so people can walk through the door. I think it's most important. So thank you. Okay, one last thing I wanted to bring up before we adjourn the meeting. The city manager and I had a conversation today. He felt it would be advantageous and important if we had our committee of the whole meetings in the morning time at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays instead of at typical time as 3 o'clock. I kind of agree. I think it would be better for staff. They're here during the day. I do think that we should keep our council meetings at 4:30 because that's when we are voting on a majority of all of our issues, to give staff, to give the residents the opportunity to weigh in on those meetings when we are voting. But the committee of the whole is basically informational meetings. So I wanted to find out if anyone had a problem with that. If not, then what I would do would bring it up at our next council meeting, because we will have to change our calendar, and I would ask the city clerk to make those changes. So I want to open that up for discussion. Councilmember Welsh.
What time in the morning are you thinking?
10 a.m.
I'd prefer earlier if possible, 9 a.m. If we're going to be switching it from an afternoon to a morning, then I'd rather be here bright and early.
Well, let's ask Mr. City Manager, is that any problem with 9? Any problem with 9 o'clock for anyone else? 9 o'clock? Well, we're going to have to work around that, because just like we did before when we moved our meetings from Monday to Wednesday, we may have to have our CTAC meetings afterwards. So, we'll work the logistics out. So committee of the whole meetings will be 9 a.m. on Wednesdays, and we'll start that with our next committee of the whole. Madam City Clerk, can we, what do we need to do to make that happen?
So I'll start making all the arrangements behind the scenes, and if we could just, at the next regular meeting, take a vote?
Yes. So if we could add that for next week's
I will.
agenda, please?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Shepherd, I see your light on.
Oh, so we're going to vote on that?
Next week, yes, we have to vote on that. And that would also give the public the opportunity to weigh in, because it'll be on the agenda, and we'll be open and transparent, and they can come in to voice their opinion one way or the other on that as well. So, but because it's a calendar, we've set the calendar meetings for this year, so that would have to be a voting topic. Councilmember Hayden?
Yeah, if we're done with that topic, I had one other
Okay.
topic.
We okay on that particular topic? Go ahead.
Okay. We are in the process, I think as most of you know, of scheduling a joint city council, youth council meeting for March 30th. And I just wanted, I know that's normally, that is a day that council isn't meeting for a regular meeting or for a cow, but I wanted to get consensus that most of us or all of us could make it that day. The youth council's come up with a good list of questions for us to have a nice dialogue with, so I just wanted to make sure. What time? 4:30.
4:30 here?
That's a
Yeah.
Wednesday too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that's a Wednesday?
Yeah,
at 4:30 p.m.
it's a Wednesday. Yeah, it's just basically replacing what would be a cow or a regular.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. Anyone else?
Nope, you're taking us to dinner after, just
Yeah.
kidding.
So is that something, Madam City Clerk, that we maybe should discuss next week as well and set that meeting for the 30th?
I can give you the same response. I'll work on all the back door items to get it ready, but it would be great to have it with a vote, because it's a new meeting type for the
Right,
council.
I would call that a special meeting between Cape Coral City Council and the Youth Council, or?
So you could call it a special meeting, absolutely, or since it's not on just one particular topic and
You
it's
call it
not
a
just you
workshop.
calling it, we can just, it's an additional meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll
Right.
add 2 items to the agenda about these things. Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? All right. Time and place of our, roundtable discussion. Is any other roundtable discussion? Okay, seeing none, time and place of future meetings. We have a regular meeting of the Cape Coral City Council is scheduled for Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. here in council chambers. Is there a motion for adjournment? Second? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.